Hey, hey. So, joining us today, we have Southpaw. He's a guy working on a long video criticizing EFAP as critics. The subject of his video is not like on a superhero or Star Wars movie or any blockbuster, but an obscure TV show. Now, I've seen this TV show and I've looked at their arguments and the references that he's brought up on a couple of streams talk about this and some early drafts of his video. And I can tell you it's very compelling. It seems pretty cut and dry. It's very well put together, and it kind of just really walks you through the argument piece by piece. And now the well has been very, very poisoned against Southpaw here by a substantial part of EFAP's fan base. He's been accused of calling them rape apologists for no reason other than just not liking the show. The truth is what he said and why he said it is a lot more complicated than that. And as someone who's seen the show, I will attest that I am on Southpaw's camp in this one. Generally, I don't like to like choose sides. I'm not like into tribalism or anything like this, but it seems like there have been lines drawn across the internet, and there's definitely I don't know. I would say a narrative that is out there that I had bought into without even really being a part or having a side in this. I had just kind of heard the narrative. I'm not even sure exactly how, kind of through the grapevine. But my co-host Patrick happened to know Southpaw, and he asked me if I knew anything about the situation. And I said, I think I know the situation, and I kind of explained it from how I had kind of heard the narrative. And Patrick told me, like, no, you really need to look into that. So I did, and I realized just how wrong I was. I had kind of just gone with this notion, kind of believed it, that, there was a guy who really liked this show, and he brought it to EFAP, and they did not like it. And that's kind of what blew up the friendship. And I really think that is a horrible narrative, and it does a lot of injustice to Southpaw. So why he's here today, Patrick actually kind of brought this about by there's been a long going thread on Twitter, and it kind of got revived, and Patrick kind of chimed in on it yet again. He's got kind of a contentious take, yet he couldn't join us today. Unfortunately, he did have to be at work right now, but I do know Patrick's argument, so we did kind of want to talk about it. But yeah, that whole argument kind of sparked, hey, let's have a conversation about this. So initially it was going to be kind of a debate to just kind of go over that scene. But I got to be honest, I'm a little bit more in Southpaw's camp on this particular interpretation of it. But I thought it would actually give quite a good discussion on this. And then, yeah, Southpaw also is gracious enough to offer to kind of explain this whole situation. And then he's offering a preview of this kind of amazing video that he is going to be releasing very soon. So welcome to the show, Southpaw. It's great to have you
Thank
here.
you very much, Gray. I'm really glad to be here. I'm glad to honestly, I'm quite well aware that there is a substantial portion of people who look at me as the enemy as a result of the fact that myself and my friends, SK especially, like to kind of clown on EFAP quite a bit, especially on Twitter, because that's where we're mainly posting. That's where I'm mainly posting, anyways. Or I'll maybe talk about them on stream. I haven't made a video in a while. This is gonna be my first video in a couple of years, really. But it's a big one. I'll be making up for lost time for sure. Yeah. It's over 6. I think it's like at this point it's over 6 hours and 20 minutes.
Wow,
it's a lot. Now, I guess there's an elephant in the room because I'm on the channel of a fellow who covers and criticizes actual fandom and organized chaos quite a bit, and those who are
yeah, I've been accused of that. Yeah,
those who are closely following the lore would know that I was, in fact, on a stream with actual fandom and organized chaos, and I was kind of buddy with them, especially on Twitter. And SK appeared on that stream with me, and he was on a stream before that, a stream that I was supposed to be on with him, but then I had my stroke and I ended up in the hospital. So I'm happy to kind of like go into detail on like, why did you start talking to these guys? Why did you think that they're good faith? Yada yada. Because in the reality is I don't keep in touch with them anymore, and I definitely think that these guys are dishonest and aren't particularly good, especially like I've never really been impressed with Organized Chaos's argumentative abilities, especially when it comes to when he decided to cover Mahler's he wanted to stream a response to Muller's Doctor Strange video. And I
Mhm.
was in the chat for some of it, and he just wasn't making any worthwhile points whatsoever in that whole thing. So
I think a lot of his kind of reaction videos are along those same lines.
yeah,
He has made some kind of cool videos in the past. And I think that is what kind of got him that
mhm,
following that he does have. Like he had this versus series where he kind of compared two movies. I think he's really good when it comes to something like that. But
I think he
for some reason, I don't see him accurately portraying what's being said when he's doing a reaction video.
to be fair to him, I am not the best
Mhm.
at like live reacting to something I've just heard of for the first time, especially if I need time. This is the thing with the Terriers arguments is first hearing about this stuff, first hearing these particular arguments, I wasn't the best at like being able to comprehend why is this so off? Why does like I'm hearing what they're saying here and this doesn't sound right, but I can't understand why. But I've taken the last couple of years to really think about this stuff, a lot of these arguments, whether it's about the law or just basic media literacy issues. And I've been able to put it into words in a way that I have done my absolute best at making it entertaining and compelling, even for people who haven't seen the show at all. I've actually shown this video to a coworker of mine who's never watched the show, and she was just enthralled from start to finish. So
I guess I should lay out my bias here with the show. I actually remember watching it like way back in the day. I'm a huge Donald Logue fan, so
he's great.
yeah, it's right up my alley. I'm definitely biased to almost anything that he's in. So yeah, I did remember this fondly, but I hadn't seen it in like over a decade. Like I believe this was like was it 2010
2010.
or something
Yeah,
like yeah. So I guess it's been like 13 years or
it's
something
been
since I'd really seen it. But after talking to you, I did go back and revisit quite a bit of it. I don't think I watched it all the way
mm,
through, but yeah, I gotta say I am biased that I did like this show, but yeah, I just don't see the criticism that it's gotten is I don't know again accurate.
yeah. It's people who will watch. If you give my video a chance, you're going to see that EFAP make a lot of like what I do in this video is I actually outline. So I'd say like the first hour and a half of the video is talking about where they talk about the law. I shotgun through like 3 or 4 things in the very first like 10-15 minutes. Then there's like a solid 30 minutes
Mhm.
focused on this one big one where it's like you got this so catastrophically wrong. It's gonna like I'm someone that I showed this video to referred to this as the nuke from orbit strategy, where it's like you're kind of overkilling
Mm.
this, but it's really funny. So then I take care of that, and then I shotgun my way through a few more legal criticisms, and then I show how they double down on this big issue that they made, and got even more things about the law wrong, as well as some basic media literacy. You know, like imagine watching Breaking Bad and assuming that the show is trying to side with Walter White. It's that kind of media illiteracy. Once that's done, once I go through all of that, it's like, okay, now let's look at some of their other arguments about this. And these are things where it's like they try to they accuse certain things of being contrived or it's a plot hole. And I'm actually able to explain why, like this thing that they call a contrivance, it's the inciting incident of the story. I outline that when they're talking about this, they don't seem to understand the concept of an inciting incident. But then I have references of them clearly knowing what an inciting incident is when they talk about Dune. This is the thing in my video that Gray's seen is that I have a lot of clips where I'm flashing back to various things
Yeah.
that they've said in the past or since I stopped being on EFAP. That makes clear, like, oh no, you do understand these basic concepts of storytelling. You're just willfully ignoring this stuff so you can complain about terriers. Um,
That's kind of where I have we kind of briefly touched on this before, but I don't know. So I had I was definitely a little bit outside the orbit. I kind of come in from kind of the more Sitch and Adam world. Like I got into YouTube kind of through the debate side of it, and then that kind of led me to Adam Sitch's channel. And then I have, seen both Regs and Mahler on there, so I'm definitely familiar with them. And then I've caught like videos here and there, but I hadn't. I I guess I could again be biased to where it was something that I agreed with, but the few videos that I have caught, I haven't noticed this particular tactic before. I'm not sure if it's just I wasn't, truly looking at what they were arguing and possibly holding it up to the highest standard. Do you see it as I don't know? Do you see it as they did something different when they were criticizing this particular show, or do you think that perhaps they're getting more credit than they deserve? Does this seem like a one-off thing? Is what I'm asking.
So I've gone back and I've looked through some of their past takes, or at least a hot take that they had that they got in a lot of trouble for. Avatar: The Last Airbender was their big one. They dropped that one on EFAP 76, I think. They kind of did that in the super chat section. Chat got really angry with them. They weren't making real arguments. Basically, they were just basically being like, "Oh yeah, Avatar is shit. You're defending something as bad as like the sequels or something." And chat was getting really riled up by it. Then Mahler does. I remember the very next EFAP was the Toy Story 4 one, which was Mahler's goal there was to try to like get the heat from Avatar to sort of die down, but that didn't really work. So he does an EFAP mini with Literature Devil, where he's talking about it. Now, Literature Devil is not a guy who got to watch through the show first before. Like he had seen the show, but he wasn't allowed to. Like he basically didn't have the time to like rewatch it first with Mahler's points in mind or anything. And what's funny is that before he spoke to Literature Devil, I think Mahler spoke to me in private, as well as a friend of mine, Buzzax, who was on my podcast. Well, he was like one of my co-hosts, right? And he's got a little voice cameo in this video of mine. Buzzax being a much bigger Avatar: The Last Airbender fan, and we spoke to him. Now, I made it clear to Mahler, like, you know what? I'm gonna go through Avatar, and I will be chat's champion. I will fight you on Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? I wanted to push back against him on this. Now, Mahler then decides to excel. Like he decides instead of that, he wants to get me into a call. He wants to get into a call with me about it, in which he shows some clips of the show. And there's stuff that definitely looked funny to me. Stuff that after having gone through it recently with a friend, I realized, oh, there's context that he just didn't show me. And then like there were some things that he said to me in Buzzax in private, in which like we were able to account for some of the things that he was saying, and he did concede. That's the weird thing, was he did concede when we had like a very clear reference that slapped down what he was saying. And then he goes and talks about it more with Literature Devil instead of someone a little bit more versed on Avatar. And then they just never decide to revisit that. And then they keep characterizing the people who are upset with them over Avatar as people who just had a sacred cow, that they were upset that I got criticized. When it seems
because that was kind of the narrative that I'd heard as well about you. Like, I'm not sure exactly how I picked that up, but
well, that's the thing, is like
that's a shame.
I've looked through, because I've looked back at the Avatar stuff. Is like, this is unbelievably similar to what happened with Terriers, basically. And so, is Mahler incapable of having a good take? I wouldn't say that he's incapable. I'd say that, like, I mean, but here's the thing. I kind of highlight this in my video. What he's got the best takes on are like the lowest hanging fruit, the obvious things. Like, I'm not going to fight him on Kenobi or Quantumania or.
And that's literally what I was going to say. Like, I know I've watched the Kenobi one, and I didn't see anything like that. It seemed like they were being extremely good fit. Again, I might be kind of biased. And then I did also just watch the I can't remember. Oh, Your Movie Sucks guy, where they were kind of going through Critical Drinker thing, and I thought they seemed exceptionally fair with him. Like, it with that many people, it could have been like a dog pile. It didn't seem like it came off that way. It seemed like they were actually being like quite cordial and kind of walking him through. So I didn't see like the same type of thing, and it seemed like they wanted to provide context and everything. So I don't know. That I was just wondering if this is one off, if this was different, because I hadn't noticed it, but I could definitely be.
So, well,
I know I've enjoyed it, but I hadn't put like a fine tooth comb over it or anything like that.
Now, I've heard the opposite regarding when YMS went on EFAP. What I was told by both Evan and a couple others was because when I said to this fellow yesterday, I said, he's not good at what he sets up. Mahler is not good at what he sets up to do as a critic, or at least he's just not consistent at all and refuses to stick with things he's actually passionate about. He doesn't argue in good faith. He's just a pseudo-intellectual debate bro. He wasn't ever really my friend, because what he did is not how anyone treats a true friend, and he's just an all-around awful person. He treats debates as a blood sport rather than honest discussions. Now, I realize that's very, very harsh what I just said. I stand by all of it, and you'll see why in my video. But when I said he treats debates as a blood sport rather than honest discussions, the guy that I said this to says the YMS EFAP was literally this statement. So maybe go back, I guess.
Yeah, I might need to revisit it, but I took it as he was really like willing to kind of walk through. I keep forgetting his name. Did you say it was Evan? YMS's kind of arguments as to why he didn't think that Critical Drinker was. I don't know.
Well, the
I guess.
description was that Mueller just
Sorry, go right ahead.
the description that I got was that Mueller just kept on going on and on with questions to crack Adam to say something contradictory, and would use that to try to have an aha, I got you now. But that didn't happen at all, and left it just awkward / painful to sit through. Now, full disclosure, I haven't watched this EFAP, right? I don't follow these guys.
Fair enough. I could definitely see. Yeah, exactly. I could definitely see that. And I only got a few of them in the past. I definitely like enjoyed them. I didn't notice that type of thing. I definitely notice it in what you have presented in the video. It seems like you've got like cut and dry cases of that. I just hadn't experienced that in the past, so I just wasn't sure if it was just this is a separate situation. But that is weird to hear a completely opposite interpretation than what I got out of that YMS once. I would like to revisit it because that wasn't my initial take, but I would be open to, I definitely could be wrong, but yeah, I just I got the complete opposite experience in that. But
I mean, yeah, with in my case, it's a lot more cut and dry. Because there's
yes, and you
there's literally moments,
and you do have quite a few examples that's really kind of cut and dry.
I mean, I open with it in my video. I'm just showing like they're making some arguments here. They're strange arguments. Here's why. The thing on cracking a joke in a deposition being, so the joke itself being, my tax returns say that I sell seashells by the seashore, but I moonlight a bit when asked if he's a PI, right? And it's like, this is a thing that was obviously a joke to me when I saw this, and Fringy gets really aggressive and really loud about why isn't he being investigated for tax evasion. Now, I asked one lawyer, my friend, right?
Sorry, I was gonna say it seems pretty obvious that like this isn't intended to be like he's making an actual statement. It's like he is just making a joke, but it is a courtroom sitting. So I can understand people thinking that you can't joke there. But yeah, I mean, sorry, you actually talked to a couple of lawyers and you got their opinions on it.
Like
sorry, what was it that you were?
Well, so I have a friend who is a lawyer. I contacted him the day after this happens, and he slapped this criticism down immediately. I sent this to Fringy, what the guy said, and this is highlighted in SK's video on this matter, by the way. And Fringy's response to that was a resounding "nuh-uh," and he basically just reiterates his point. And so now in the watch party itself, before I have this input from this actual lawyer, I'm just kind of confused, and I'm talking to him kind of the same way that I'm talking right now. Meanwhile, Fringy is going, "You're not allowed to lie. You're not allowed to lie. You're not allowed to lie," over what I'm saying.
It did seem like I'm not sure if you're familiar with the concept of the elephant and rider. It did seem like the elephant was in control on that. It didn't seem like he was. He definitely seemed to be an amygdala hijack. It seemed like he was taking it to the next level. As you kind of point out, he keeps cutting you off, and he's trying to talk over you, like also in volume, but also just not let you actually get out the answer. And this was just supposed to be like a watch party. It wasn't, hey, come in here and defend this. Like you were just supposed to watch a show with your friends. Yeah, I could definitely see not being prepared to have a rebuttal or a blood sport type debate when you're just going into a watch party.
The most important thing to me at this point wasn't to win a fight over a TV show. It was not to lose my cool with Fringy while he was obviously trying to get a rise out of me. Because that's just the thing, is when someone's yelling over you and just cutting you off and constantly, it's easy for you to lose your cool. And I was just focusing on not doing that. And I actually just made an addendum in I think 2 nights ago, going over the fact that there are Mueller fans or EFAP fans who've watched this watch party, see this, and conclude that Fringy must be right. And I just go like, I don't know how you come to this conclusion if you watch the watch party, unless you have this premise that whoever is talking the most loudly and aggressively is the correct one. Like,
there appears to be like a portion of the internet that does seem to believe that, though. The whole louder wins. It does seem to be a tactic that certain people use as a I don't know if you'd even call it a rhetorical tool, just a tool.
Yeah,
it's I don't know. It works for some people.
It's a thing where it's like, okay, I think that if you think this, it's like, okay, you're a debate bro. Then you don't actually argue based on like having an honest discussion, argue based on the facts and the evidence. It's simply you treat debates as a blood sport, is what I said, right? And so I highlight this And my thing is, I don't care about how aggressively someone or confidently someone says something. I'm like, was it true? And the point of my video is to go, like, I've done an exhaustive amount of research into the legal arguments. Not one single thing that they said about the law is
Yeah,
true.
and you seem to be, talking to experts, and then you're putting in like that actual like expert opinion, even though it just doesn't seem like necessarily the most good faith argument
Mhm.
against, like you could never smuggle someone across the board. Well, I guess that's not necessarily one that you consulted the lawyer on, but just there were so many kind of arguments that it's like, yeah, I guess you could say that, but it still keeps happening.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
Okay, fine.
sidetrack away from the ones that you actually got the evidence for, but yeah, it just. I know you've got an uphill battle here,
Mhm.
since you do have a narrative put against you, and then to actually kind of explain this, you would be asking people to not asking. You would hope that they would watch the full 6 hour video.
Mhm.
That does seem like kind of a big ask nowadays to get anyone to sit through an entire
Well,
long video like that. So again, not only you're fighting
mhm.
that the actual narrative, but then with the way this is explaining it to actually show every argument that's out
Mhm.
there and kind of truly dissect every part of it and kind of show
Mhm.
now this is where it was incorrect. It does require someone to actually devote like 6 hours of their
Right.
time to it, if not even more, because then there's logs, there's watch parties. Yeah, I can definitely see why you've put so much work into this. So I would urge anybody to just go into it with an open mind. Just look at the evidence
Mhm.
presented. It's presented quite
What
well.
I the thing that I've got going for me in regards to this video is that I think the first 15 minutes alone, I shotgun through some very obvious, like, okay, they're obviously full of shit here. They're obviously talking nonsense here. To the point where it's like, I mean, my brother's complimented me very much on the first 15 minutes of the videos. Like this, just, I mean, if I only had 15 minutes to like look into this, like this is a very good 15 minutes to give me the sense of, oh, these guys don't know what they're talking about. The next 30 minutes after that, so thoroughly beats down on the argument about going over the border, that it's also like you could probably click off the video at that point and you'd be like, okay, these guys don't know what they're talking about. But I keep going and
But then you'd
going and
miss some
going.
of the controversial Twitter things as well after
Yes.
that. They kind of keep coming up. It's just it's a big uphill. I don't know if you'd call it Sisyphusian task, but it's kind of amazing to see what you and SK have been doing, where you are inviting people who are literally coming at you on Twitter, like, "Hey, do you want to talk about
Yeah.
this? I'll show you the evidence." And it's just kind of amazing to watch you kind of walk them. Okay, what have you heard? What's your evidence for this? And then you walk them through. That isn't what actually
Mhm.
happened. Here's what it is. There's been at least a couple of them that you guys have had on, kind of shown that journey, and you can see in real time somebody's mind being
Mhm.
changed. And then there's others that you've just talked to on Twitter. I think in one tweet you were able to change someone's mind the other day. That's just
Oh, it just happened
I don't
today.
know.
It just happened today. Like with,
Oh, sorry, it was
yeah,
today.
it was just today. This guy was hassling me and SK for us clowning on Fringy, and like in a single tweet, when SK just points out Fringy actually thinks that every single car gets searched at the border. The guy tried to respond, be like, "Well, isn't that true?" And we're like, "No, here's why." And like in the span of one tweet, I basically explain why. And it takes me 25 minutes to get through in this video. But in one tweet, I explain why, and then I also even show a clip from the show that I also show in the video. After I go through all this research, that outlines, like, yeah, they even mentioned this in the show, that this isn't the thing that they do.
And I could totally see being, a little bit, I don't know if I'd say naive or uninformed as to,
Oh,
crossing into like
absolutely.
a US border. These guys aren't US citizens. Maybe they haven't done that before. But yeah, I've actually got into Canada quite a few times, and I have never been searched. But yeah, it's
I've
I don't know. I could understand being under that impression if you've just seen, like television shows or something, thinking that it's more like, a car going into like jail or something where they're like putting ears under it and everything.
I I wish to highlight
It's not necessarily that.
I wish to highlight that in this video, while I have some very harsh things to say about a lot of EFAP fans, I do say, in fairness, you might not have seen some of these criticisms I'm going over because they're in a live stream that EFAP has that you can look at, but it's only got 13,000 views. So a relatively small portion of their audience has probably seen this stuff. All right. The other thing, of course, is when it comes to the stuff about the border, is like, well, to a layman, this might sound convincing. Fringy sounds very confident as he's talking about this stuff. And if you believe that Fringy's got a good head on his shoulders, then, you're going to be willing to accept this. I've shown this. I've shown what Fringy said to people who are like, well, yeah, that makes sense. But then I just talked to them about it for like 5 minutes and they're like, oh, that's a very broken point. I was like, yeah, it is. And I acknowledge this in my video. I'm like, to a layman, this might sound convincing, but let's take a breath and let's actually think about all this. And then I just talk about it for like 20, 25 minutes, basically from there. Yeah. I don't know where I was going to go after that. So I guess I guess that wraps it
Yeah,
up.
sorry for sidetracking. I took to a weird tangent. But yeah, it's just really been kind of amazing to see kind of I can understand why you've been so focused on this. It does seem like quite a big issue, and then it doesn't seem to be dying down on its own.
Well, it's
again with people kind of like Patrick kind of poking the bear, and we can definitely talk about his take in a bit. But
well, that's the thing is, I guess we can segue into like the real one of the biggest reasons why this is still focused on, why we still talk about this, because
sure. Let's do it.
It definitely goes beyond just a bad take over a TV show. Because unfortunately, a part of this take involves how people talk about rape and sexual consent. And that sounds like a huge step up from what we've been talking about up to this point.
Yeah.
Because it is.
Which, yeah, it is kind of one of the more serious and heavy parts of this show. And it seems to be interpreted a bunch of different ways. So I do understand Patrick's interpretation of this. I guess I'm not sure how you'd want to approach it, if you want to kind of approach like the controversy first, and then we can kind of get into Patrick's position, or let's so they had so you gained kind of a reputation from them, and it seems to be one of kind of the most contentious parts of this. I guess would you kind of like to talk about that whole like kind of accusation thing, the
rape apologist thing,
calling them yes, that would be the one that I'm trying to get at.
So the narrative that you will most likely have heard if you are really ingrained in EFAP's audience is that EFAP didn't like the show, and I therefore called them rape apologists out of a vacuum. To put it in, I mean, I guess like it would be comparable to say if you didn't like Kenobi, and then someone just randomly calls you a rape apologist when rape isn't at all a plot point in Kenobi, so you're like, well, what the fuck is that about? Now, so two things. There's this is a false narrative on two fronts. One being, I never called them rape apologists. Now, I've seen multiple people say that what I actually said is not meaningfully different from calling them rape apologists, because what I said was they victim blamed. And that's one thing we can go through.
I could definitely see a distinction. I think, again, it's to what most arguments are. It's definitions. So if somebody is going to say, no, that means exactly the same thing, this is my definition that I'm using. I don't know. Unfortunately, that's what a lot of arguments kind of devolve into. And that kind of seems like what's going on with that accusation. That like, no, because you said A, I'm saying that you actually said B.
Well, the reason
that's not fair.
Yeah. Okay, so I get hung up on the whole like you call them rape apologists thing. I go, no, I said that they victim blamed, and they're gonna go, well, that's basically the same thing as like, okay, well, so first off, is like if it was, you could have just said that I called them victim blamers, but you chose to use rape apologists instead because
More
that sounds worse. So I'm like, I already don't believe that even you actually think that these are the same things. The next thing, of course, is I'd rather just like clarify as like, that's not the term I use. I use this because if we then have an argument over what they said and why I would have said this, then they're going to say, well, that isn't actually a rape apology. That this would have been unintentional. I'm like, yes, it probably was unintentional. It probably was accidental. It probably was ignorant, which is why I said victim blaming, not rape apology. It's like this is why I say these are not one and the same terms. But the problem is it's so unbelievably dishonest. It's basically it's people telling two lies at the same time, and making it into a catch-22 is like, which one of these am I going to go after first, right? Because one, it's not calling them rape apologists, and two, I didn't say that they victim blamed because they didn't like a show. I said that they victim blamed because they victim blamed,
and they didn't like it. It's not a because like there are two separate claims. So I don't know. It does seem also dishonest, but again, that well was kind of poisoned against you, and
absolutely.
it's still kind of a harsh term, like, who wants to be called a victim
Mhm.
blamer? But they had some really inflammatory language as well, what they were calling this character, and kind
Mm.
of, it seems, and I don't generally say this lightly, but it seems pretty misogynistic. Perhaps they were trying to go for, a joke, but I don't know. It just seems like that in conjunction with their take on it, I don't know. It doesn't seem to come off as, I'm just kind of kidding here. Where Patrick had kind of a similar take. It's completely different, but his definitely had some hyperbole, and he was joking on Twitter. He's a little bit more, um, everyone's a little bit more amped up on
Yeah.
Twitter. It's not exactly how you talk to somebody face to face. So I do think his language was a little bit different, but yeah, we can kind of get into his take in a bit.
Mhm.
But yeah, just the overall way that this scene is played out. I could understand, like, some interpreting it differently than you are, but
Mhm.
I don't know. It seems kind of damning, especially the way that you have kind of included all the information. It does appear, even when they were kind of showing it to their Discord, they had cut out a lot of context in it, so it does make it seem more like it fits their interpretation of
Mhm.
it. But I don't know, that seems egregiously kinda dishonest to me to, take out the context that could possibly lead to a different
Oh, especially
interpretation. It just doesn't seem to.
with the surgical precision that they did too, because like they left out something that the character says immediately before the clip plays, and then they also end the clip right before she says something that also makes it clear that it's like this character isn't villainous in the sense that they really want their fans to believe. Um,
Yeah, it seems like they really have a grudge against this character, and, I could understand thinking that the character doesn't have clean hands, but wow, like, they go hard on this character, a little harder than necessary. Well, a lot harder than
yeah,
necessary, in my opinion. Again, it's just my opinion, but, yeah, it seems egregious when, especially, like, you show the actual clip and the actual context, and then kinda what that clip is, and you show, a screenshot of the Discord so that you can see that it is actually the way that it was presented on there. It's not just like, here's a clip that they have.
Mhm.
It just kinda, it really certainly paints a light for me that, I don't know, I yeah, like I said, I did enjoy the talk with, YMS. I didn't view them doing the same thing, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I definitely could be wrong. It just seems like something different is going on here to me, and I guess I don't understand exactly why.
Well,
Especially since you guys were on good terms, and you're just showing this show that you enjoy to your friends.
there's a very
I don't know. It just seems so weird that you get to hear from there.
and that's the thing that people also don't understand is like they'd be like, well, why would they lie? Why would they lie about this? Why would they do this to get to Southpaw? Why, like, what possible reason could they have to lie about it? And it's like, well, I hint at it in my video without doing a whole section outlining like the possible motivation, but I leave some breadcrumbs of information in my video that if you are astute, you're paying attention, like, oh, this is about him criticizing civil war. So we can go into that later.
Sure.
So I guess is it worth going? Like, can I go ahead and I guess define the difference between a rape apologist and
Yeah.
a victim? Okay, so um,
Yeah. Let's talk about that. And I'll put the text up on the screen afterwards,
yeah,
probably.
so I wrote this in a doc because initially this was a doc titled Patrick debate notes because I was going to have a debate with Patrick about this on this recording. But because he's not here, I guess it's just going to be a little bit more of a one-sided affair. But rape apology is when one acknowledges that a rape has taken place and with that knowledge in mind proceeds to make up excuses for the rapist. It's really cut and dry, basically. So, or like, like basically, here's how it works. All murder is killing. Not all killing is murder because sometimes you kill in self-defense or you kill on accident, manslaughter, or you're a soldier, right? You're fighting in a war. You're not murdering people when you're fighting in a war. Um, but like murder is categorically killing, but killing it's a very specific kind of killing, right? So a lot of rape apology, and not all rape apology, but a lot of rape apology is victim blaming. However, the caveat here, like the thing that distinguishes it from what I said, which is just victim blaming, is that it's doing it while acknowledging that someone was raped. Now, I said in my server, I have the screenshot present right there. What I had said in my server was, they called Katie a bad character for cheating on Britt, apparently, not understanding that she was raped, given how drunk she was and how lucid her professor was. So this isn't me saying these guys are bad people, they're rape apologists. I was like, they don't understand that she was raped. Okay. So this is why I didn't call them rape apologists. Now, Wolf later gaslit me into thinking I might have in that call that we had. But there isn't a record of me actually saying this. I've looked through everything. I never said it. I never accused them of being rape apologists when I talked to Mahler about it in private, or Wolf, or Fringy. I never said it on my server or any group DM that I've ever been a part of. So I don't know what they're talking about there. But it seems like Wolf, when he accused me of that, was operating under the same assumption that rape apology and victim blaming are the same thing. So now that I've defined what rape apology is, let's go over victim blaming. Victim blaming is when one casts blame on the victim of a crime or non-criminal assault of sorts. Unlike rape apology, it can be done out of ignorance or a failure to understand that there is a victim to blame. Johnny Depp, for example, was effectively being victim blamed by people who were under the impression that Amber Heard was the one who was being abused. They were ignorant as to the truth, but that does not change the fact of the matter that he was the victim and he was blamed for it, nor does it change the effects that that would have had on him mentally at the time. So someone who doesn't understand that Johnny Depp is the victim, they believe that he's the abuser. I think like if they see the evidence that he was the victim and then they concede, I think it's like very different from someone who knows that Amber Heard was the abuser and was blaming Johnny Depp anyways, right? There's absolutely a huge distinction there. But if I were to blame Johnny Depp, if I were to have blamed Johnny Depp under the basis that I believed Amber Heard, I still would have victim blamed Johnny Depp, even if I had absolutely no malicious intent whatsoever. Now, when I first commented on this, because this message was not about what they said on their server, this was about what they said on their stream. I wasn't aware of what they then said on their server. And well, I mean, this is the thing is I was in a group chat that a few members of that group chat were on that server and they were sending me screenshots. Now, I hadn't seen the clips. They didn't show me the clips that were being taken out of context. I wasn't aware that the clips of them taking it out of context until like a couple months after the call with Wolf. So I'm not trying to vilify them and claim that they were knowingly, committing rape apology here. However, I was accurately just saying that what they did was victim blaming. I say that in a different message. In fact, I can let me just fetch the screenshot for that real quick. And I'll put that in the doc. Blame. What I said, and this is like 30 minutes after I said that, in the initial message there. This is within 30 minutes of saying that. And I can get the timestamp just to make sure I've got that right, or sorry, the updated message. So I'm basically telling people to essentially do to terriers what these guys did. Do to other media what these guys did to terriers. Now let me just go ahead and quickly get the screenshot, the updated screenshot with the timestamp. So that's at 10. The first thing that I said was sent at 10:31 in the morning Eastern time on September 2nd. The thing where I said victim blame rape victims if possible, while telling people to do to other media what these guys did to terriers as a means of satirizing their arguments, basically, was sent at 10:58 on the same day. In front of the same crowd of people. These people understand the context of what I'm talking about here. Now, Mahler sees that thing where I just simply said they called Katie a bad character for cheating on Britt. And he sent that to me. He said, crossing a line here, I think we should have a chat. Now, when I say that they victim blamed a rape victim, that is a matter of objective fact. I'm so tired of hearing people say, well, you call them victim blamers. It's like, I don't care. It's true. Or like, am I not allowed to say it if it's true? Because I remember when this was going to be a debate with Patrick, Patrick, wanted to make sure like I wasn't going
Mhm.
to call him like a rape apologist, and I said I have no intention of doing that. Now, if he begins actually like acknowledging that a rape happened and then blaming the victim or making excuses for the rapist, I will say that's rape apology. But the shoot, like
Yeah,
the
and
boot
that
has to fit,
wasn't his argument.
right? It wasn't his
Again, I don't
argument.
wanna, like
I
I don't know all of his argument, like, I don't know, every one of his intentions, I can't mind read it, but I definitely know the basics of it, and, yeah, it was not that,
no,
we can kinda get into that in just a second if you want
well,
to.
I should just I
I
just
just
I
think
should just
it's
make it
it's
clear that
a bit separate.
yeah,
Mhm.
I should make it clear that I've seen Patrick's arguments. I don't think Patrick is a rape apologist. All right,
Okay,
I think
good to know, I'm sure he is glad to know that
yeah,
too.
no, like I don't
Um,
agree with Patrick's perspective here. I don't think he's a rape apologist. I think that at
mhm,
worst he's misguided. Basically, that's
mhm.
like misguided slash ignorant, and it's not a crime to be misguided or ignorant. I think that he means well. All right, so I need to make this abundantly clear. You're not a rape apologist if you if you just don't agree with me on this thing. It depends on, well,
Yeah, I
what are
think
you
he just has
saying?
a slight yeah, I think he just has a slight different interpretation of it,
Mhm.
and we'll get into that in just a second, but it is different than, what, kind of these guys went on to, say.
Yes.
Because yeah, I can understand, why you had, kind of that language that you were using towards, the claims that they made, and you do have all this in that video.
Mhm.
Again, I would urge people I think it's somewhere around, like, 2 hours on that one.
Yeah, I,
I
I could have easily front loaded the video could have started with this, but I chose to wait until I was about 2 hours
mhm,
in. Like this is basically about the halfway point of dealing with Arteria's arguments. I wanted to go through a bunch of other things because I didn't want to run the risk of poisoning the well. Because this stuff is so
mhm.
awful that it
And
does.
it's really heavy, and, you
Yeah.
do give kind of a warning, like, if this subject matter isn't for you, skip ahead, and,
Mhm.
it makes sense 'cause, this is definitely a heavy, topic and, definitely kind of a heavy claim on both sides,
Yeah.
claiming that you're calling people this, but also what you did actually call them. It's a pretty heavy accusation too,
Mhm.
but you do back that up with, quite a bit of documentation and evidence,
Yeah.
so I can definitely understand where you're coming from with your accusation and where you're saying, "That's not what I
Mhm.
said. Here's what I actually said, and here's why I said it."
Right.
It does seem to make sense. So I would urge people, we're being a little bit vague on it here, but do check it out in his video. I think you'll come to your own conclusion on it.
The
But yeah, it's heavily
the
evident.
thing the thing that I want people to go in, like the number one thing I want people to do when watching this is seriously ask themselves, what if they were wrong? Like if you're like, well, Southpaw said they victim blames, like, what if I'm right? What if that's correct? It sounds shocking, right? Like I'm sure, like I bet, like to Gray when he first heard of this, it just sounded like it was like there was no way that they could be in the right. Um, but like,
Just from my limited experience with them, it just doesn't seem like it's in character. On it doesn't seem like it's something that they would be
mhm,
doing. I know, they do have a different take on, on another movie. You do bring that up quite well. I like the way that you have that argument in there as well. They don't seem to be doing the same type of deal
mhm,
with like Wonder Woman 1984,
mhm.
for instance. It just seems it seems like an odd take.
It's very odd.
Again, I'm not like an EFAP stan or anything like that, but I definitely didn't dislike any of the content that I'd seen from them before, and I wasn't like against them by any means. I had basically watched the ones that I was kind of on board with, like the Kenobi one and everything, and yeah, I didn't find anything egregious in there or anything that I would have
It's
found contentious. It seemed pretty cut and
yeah.
dry, but this seems a little bit different, and this section in particular really kind of it stands out to me. This is kind of the one that got to me. It's not the kind of arguments I would have expected from that
This
camp.
is where it quits being about just simply a silly take on a TV show to like, well, now we're crossing over into these guys don't understand how consent seems to work, and their fan base really doesn't, and also really wants to give me grief about this, while also making some of the literally just some of the worst arguments I've ever seen.
And yeah, I do want to separate, Patrick's argument from that because his also has something to do with consent. But yeah, it is a little bit different. Would you like to get on to the Patrick part now, or would you like to kind of cover more of EFAB's version on this. I don't know if we can go into as much detail as you have in that video. So I just urge everyone to watch that section
Well,
for sure.
I guess let me just continue defining my terms real quick. So
Yeah, for sure.
as for rape, there's like a thing that comes to mind when people think of rape. They think it might be like forcible or something. And that's not what it is. It can be done by force. However, it doesn't.
Yeah, it can be for sure. It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be. So rape is simply sexual intercourse committed that one party could not have given informed consent to. Now, there are universally recognized limits on when informed consent can be given. For instance, minors cannot legally give consent because we have recognized that they are not mature enough to make such decisions. By this same token, it is not ethical to sleep with someone who is significantly brain damaged. Because even if they say yes, it is not likely that they are cognizant enough to know what they are agreeing to, making them highly susceptible to being taken advantage of by someone who isn't similarly compromised. By this same token, it is not ethical to bring someone to a similar state of being susceptible to influence for sexual gratification, whether via drugs, alcohol, or in the case of speculative fiction in the science fiction and fantasy genres, any form of technology, potion, spell, or supernatural ability that grants mind control. As such, rape does not need to be forcible in order to be a violation of one's bodily autonomy. And then just a couple more clarification things. Is it rape if someone has only had one or two drinks and is at best buzzed or tipsy? It's like, well, no. The ability to consent is not a binary matter when alcohol is involved. People are capable of making cognitive decisions, even if they've had one or two beers. However, there's a threshold that once you cross it, you become incapable of giving informed consent. There are clear differences between buzzed, tipsy, and drunk. And in the show, it's abundantly clear that the character is drunk. She is too drunk to drive. She is too drunk to find her car. She is not in a state where she can give consent. And her professor is said to have been the one to drive her to his place. Instead of just getting her attacked or something. It's like, okay, so he was sober, she wasn't. Great. Is it rape if two drunk people have sex with each other? I say for the same reason that it isn't statutory rape if two minors were to have sex with each other. No. When both parties are on an even playing field, cognitively speaking, no one is taking advantage of each other when two drunk people hook up. There is a caveat, however. If you are sober and a drunk person begins throwing themselves at you and you plan to take advantage of them, but you then decide to get drunk first, this does not magically make the encounter consensual. You understand that, right?
Yeah. I think there could be different interpretations of the scenes, and I think that's kind of where Patrick's coming in. I don't disagree with what you're saying. Just I think people could kind of see the scene a little bit different. So I don't want to say that I can fully argue Patrick's argument because it's not exactly how I see it, but he did see it as she did make a choice to go drinking with her classmate who she was interested in her, and then she chose to get drunk. He doesn't see it necessarily as like she's too drunk to maybe he doesn't see it necessarily drunk. I kind of see it differently. I'm interpreting it as, she tries to put her keys in the wrong car. She's unable to like actually open or even get the keys in the door of the wrong
Patrick's
car.
perspective,
She seems to be.
I'm sorry, I just have to highlight here. So she isn't just going out with one guy, like a fellow student. She is.
Yeah.
This is a thing like her class is going to a karaoke bar. This is a social setting. It's a very.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go with this one guy who likes me. It's like,
fair enough. That is a good distinction.
Yeah. So I don't know if Patrick's
but he just kind of sees it as like. I think he is, because he did even look into like some supplemental materials. I think he is. I think he just has like a slight different interpretation, which I don't know. I don't get that same interpretation, but I guess I could understand how you'd get to that, because he's not. So he was a little hyperbolic online, but he obviously doesn't believe that like you could just take advantage of a drunk person. He saw that the professor was also at that bar. Perhaps the professor had been drinking, so it might not necessarily be a sober person and a drunk person. It seems like he is definitely much less inebriated than her, but he didn't necessarily, I think, see her as that like full-on drunk level that you were saying. Like there's tipsy, buzz. I can't remember which order you put them in. But he also sees that there is, like a gray area, and then once you cross a certain threshold, you can no longer consent.
Right.
He's not saying like, just go out and have sex with drunk people. That's fine. And I think he also said something about like he's experienced that before. So, he's been drunk and he didn't feel taken advantage of. And then he kind of brought up a later line that she says where it implies that she sabotaged it, that like uh, she, it's not, I wish I had the actual line in front of me, but the way that she references it, it sounds like she's trying to take the blame for it and say that it's her fault, that she basically sabotaged this, that she wasn't good enough for this relationship, so perhaps she let it happen. Or again, I don't think I'm using the correct words, but I think he's seeing she's not as drunk as you're seeing her, and then that later line saying that she kind of chose to do that. So he's not seeing it as like clean hands on this. That like she kind of knew that she was doing wrong, and whether I guess he just doesn't see it on that same level.
Yeah.
I can understand what you're saying, that like if somebody's too inebriated, and that's kind of how I see it. Like the fact that she's fumbling, she can't get her keys in the door, she's going to the wrong car, and then I think she even falls down in that moment. I see that as over the line, like she could not consent.
Yeah.
I think that's just the different interpretation, and I mean, I don't know. I've been around a lot of people who were on a lot of alcohol. I used to be in bands and stuff, and you'd be surprised. I had this one guitarist who he would black out. It would seem like he's there, like you'd have a conversation with him, but just every once in a while, you notice that there's just this kind of blank stare in his eye, and then he couldn't remember any of it. So I don't know if I'm bringing some of that into that as well. That maybe she's able to like walk and stuff, even if she isn't able to, put the keys in the car and everything. But I don't know. It just seems to me like she's on a different level, but maybe I'm bringing that into this. I could see somebody interpreting that slightly differently. And then when you get into kind of the supplemental material, it seems like they were trying intentionally, the writer and director, they didn't know exactly how they wanted the scene to be played out until it actually was filmed. So it kind of seemed like they were trying to, I don't know, toe the line a little bit, play a little bit on both sides, so that you couldn't tell if she like fully intended this, but she definitely feels responsible for it. But I completely see your interpretation of it as well. I think my interpretation would be a little bit closer to yours, but I don't know.
So
it is.
I mean, I could use that right now to like just sort of like let me bounce off of that and just say like, all right, so there's like there's 3 possible lines of defense for this. So number 1 is, well, maybe the professor was drunk. That's the first possible defense.
Yeah, and then the professor was there too, so there is a possibility that he wouldn't be inebriated, or sorry, that he would be, but it really doesn't show anything on that, and it doesn't say anything about that. So he drives away from there, so it kind of implies that he's not as inebriated as her.
Right.
But I guess that could be open to your interpretation as well. I'm not sure.
Well, so on this one, I would just simply say is like, so we have a reference for, so Gavin, the student, he's drank something that night with her, but he's clearly fine enough to offer her a ride home. He's identifying.
Yeah, that guy we get more interaction with. We see that dude is definitely not inebriated.
He's identified that she is trying to get into the wrong car before she does. It's reasonable to say, all right, he's not inebriated. She is. He would be taking advantage of her if he were to make a move on her, which, by the way, he does. And EFAP doesn't seem to understand that.
He tries to.
Yeah, I highlight this as well as like, oh, that's pretty awful to hear them say. Now the professor shows up,
and
well, go ahead.
Sorry, it's in that thing, but yeah, they seem to be, at least one of their groups seems to be okay with that. And I don't know, I guess it's just a moral code or whatever. But I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's just a guy shooting a shot. It seems like it's someone being pretty scummy there.
Yeah. He identifies that she is drunk, and then he tries to make a move on her. And when she says no, he's like, "Well, it's not like you're married," because he knows that she has a boyfriend. It's awful. And when Britt caves his face in, it's one of those things where like, you're not the right guy, but deserved. So okay. So the thing with the professor is, the professor shows up. And he's like, "Hey, everything okay?" He isn't stumbling. He doesn't. There's nothing about what we see of the professor that at all seems to be communicating that he is like inebriated at all. He may have been in the bar. However, he isn't shown drinking anything. He's, in fact, he seems to be in charge of the karaoke thing, because it's karaoke night with like the students basically. So it seems to me more like he's like a chaperone of sorts, basically. So, and then of course we find out like there's a line of dialogue in episode 8 that makes it clear that she went home with him. So they didn't call like a taxi for her or anything. She went home with him. All right. like she went home with him because she was too drunk to drive. I think the direct implication there is, well, he isn't too drunk to drive. He's sober enough to drive her home, and then he takes her to his place and sleeps with her. So
it does seem like, and that's the way that I interpret it. I guess I could see, they're all out drinking. Perhaps he is drunk as well, and it just doesn't show that. It doesn't have as much interaction with the professor as it does with I can't remember his name, the other student. I guess I could see somebody interpreting it that way. That's just not the way that I'm seeing it, but fair enough. I guess that would be an interpretation of it.
Well, I'd have to defer to Occam's razor. Is what is the interpretation that, or what is the inference that requires the most writing for the writer, doing the writer's job for them? Is like, well, I'm going based off of what's actually shown to me, and what's being shown to me is directly implying that this guy is not drunk. What people who are trying to argue think he must be drunk, they have to actually headcanon in a possibility that maybe he took her to his place and then she sobered up. I'm like, okay, well that's not a scene in the show. It's never alluded to. So
yeah, I don't know if it's even that. And again, it would be hard to argue that some of this wouldn't be headcanon, but it would just be like, they're out drinking. Like if she drank that much, who's to say that the other ones didn't drink that much and it just didn't show it? I think I could see someone interpreting it that way, but then I think you'd have to be going the argument of, so it's two drunk people.
Right.
It just didn't show that he drunk drove home because, you don't want to advertise it. Again, it does feel like there would be some sort of headcanon-ish justification as opposed to, I don't know, he doesn't look drunk. She's obviously drunk. So it seems like he's taking advantage. That's the way that I'm interpreting it. Yeah, I could see, I guess, trying to piece that together to be like, it feels like it's a stretch.
It's a stretch, and it's not like whether or not it's genuinely your interpretation, it is not a solid defense against me. All right, that's all I'm going to say. So we can move on from that one, and we can move on to the next thing, which is, well, Katie says that she knew exactly what she was doing. This is the thing that I've seen a lot in SK's in the comments on SK's video on this. So this is the thing. I talked about this earlier when Wolf accused me of saying they were rape apologists, right? And I didn't really fight back against him on that, because when I'm confronted on that, I'm just thinking like, did I? He seems like he's sure that I did. I'm sorry, dude.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, but it's like, this is the thing is, I guess the question is, do you not think that it is possible for people to be incorrect about their own experiences? And the reality is, this thing with me and EFAP, it starts with exactly that problem, where I'm told that I'm the one who gets angry in a watch party with them, when there is literally a recording that shows the opposite is true. So it's like, well, obviously it's not the case that just because someone says that this is what happened doesn't mean that's actually true. Now, if we don't have this scene showing how drunk she is versus how sober her professor is, then it would be a lot more up for interpretation, and it'd be reasonable. It'd be less reasonable to assume it was rape, right? Without this scene. Because the thing is, I'm not going off of what she says. I'm going off of what's shown to me. I have to do this at another point in the show as well. I highlight, I think that you know what I'm talking about, right? He could have killed the kid. That line dialogue was like, yeah, Mark says that line. Now let's have a look at Gavin's face. Like, he doesn't look like he was nearly killed. He just looked like he was beat up a bit and he went to the hospital. Like he doesn't look like Joel in The Last of Us 2. You know?
Yeah, it's that is a good point. There does seem to be a parallel there. I think, others are kind of bringing in that line that she says where she kind of she said she knew what she was doing. She's kind of like, taking the blame for it. Perhaps it is my own headcanon. Perhaps I'm bringing it to that. But it does seem like a lot of times victims do kind of do just that. And they kind of, a way that you can kind of deal with getting over something is if you kind of take ownership of it. Basically. So a lot of times it's, I put myself in that situation. I knew what I was doing. So I don't know if I'm kind of headcanoning that, but I could kind of see that in conjunction with, well, they're all at the bar drinking. Maybe somebody could interpret that as, she kind of knew. I don't know, like her hands wouldn't be clean. I still don't get how you get that, like, she is a horrible girlfriend. She did this on purpose. Like, again, that's not what Patrick's arguing, but that does seem to be an argument that has been laid out there.
It's extremely common for rape victims, people, especially this kind of drug fueled sexual assault, to do this. to
Mhm.
be in denial as to what happened to them, to take responsibility for uh, um, like what's happened to them, basically. However, it's like
For
just
sure.
because if you have someone who was raped and then that person says it was my fault, that doesn't magically mean that they actually consented. That's not how this works.
Yeah.
That's not how we do this. So that's I think that's like we've already gone to point A. I think that's point B. Basically, that line of dialogue is enough.
Mhm.
Um, especially
Mhm.
when talking about like the actual like what the show actually shows us prior to her saying this. That's like that is completely at odds with what she says here. I don't care what she says here. I care about what's shown. So then point C.
Mhm.
This is the really the final offense is well the creators didn't mean to write a rape scene here. It's not framed as rape in the show. So there's really this is the most interesting aspect of this, right? So
Mhm.
first off, so if the people who made this show, because and this thing is, I agree, I don't think that they meant for this to be rape. However,
But I guess it kinda depends how you analyze media.
mhm,
Like, if you're using kind of the death of the author thing, does it matter what they intended? Like, is it more just what's on the screen? Or are you looking for, I think the term has been called, like,
uh,
the paratext or whatever, everything that's, a aside from what was actually, like, written in there, so it would include things like the author's, notes, any interviews with them, anything like that,
the
where I think this would fall into it.
the video that I'm aware of would be Sarah
E
Z's video on death of the author versus authorial intent. That's what
Mhm.
she said was authorial
Yeah.
intent.
Yes. So I think it was Lindsay Ellis kind of came up with this way that you can still use death of the author, but then you can bring in. So there, it was specifically kind of against J.K. Rowling, but
Mhm,
it was. I think the term was paratext. I remember para means outside, so it was just like anything outside of it, but you're still going with just what's there.
mhm,
Except for now, you get to bring in like interviews and stuff. Um, I don't know. It does feel like that might be kind of a hybrid, but in a weird way to kind of analyze
well,
something. I think I like the death of the author, just in that okay, so even if they were intending to do
mhm,
this, were they effective at it? Like,
right.
because they intended not to do a rape scene, is that what we ended up with? I'm seeing that as somebody taking advantage of somebody else, so I don't think it matters what they intended. And then when you do look into, like, that supplemental material where they talk about how they were not sure exactly how they wanted to go on it, it sounds like they, were very kind of up in the
Mhm,
air as to how they wanted to play this, and they kind of, decided on the actual day.
mhm.
So I don't know. I'm kind of in the camp, especially I had this really good conversation. It hasn't come out yet, but please look forward to it next week. But it kind of goes over the death of the author concept, and I don't know. I think the more I've been thinking about this, that's kind of the camp that I'm in.
Yeah.
I could kind of care less what they were intending. It's kind of what did they accomplish in this actual
I mean, you
work.
know what? I think I can destroy this this defense like right here. So if we're going to go with well, the author says that it wasn't rape, therefore it's not rape. It's like, okay. And what if
Mhm.
Ryan Johnson had gave us an explanation in an interview for how the Holdo maneuver works? Like,
Mhm.
oh, well, that's not in the movie now, is it? So that
Yeah,
doesn't save the writing of the movie. It's like, okay, if Ryan Johnson was able to come up with a reasonable excuse for how this is able to occur in paratext, right, in something outside of the actual film, it's like that's great. That doesn't change the fact that that doesn't exist in the film, right? Um,
yeah,
so it's like right. So I don't think that these people really want to defer to that because then it means like okay, so then basically, the um oh, you don't think that this makes sense in The Last Jedi? Well, there's a comic book that accounts for this. Like, I don't care about the millions of Star Wars comics. I care about what's in the movie. If I need to do homework for the movie to make
yeah.
sense, then your movie is a failure. I'm sorry. So basically, it's like, yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
And then like the simple fact of the matter
It
is
seems
like,
like a
okay,
fair kind of way to criticize something that
mhm,
like if it's not there, how am I supposed to judge this on
right.
that? It just feels like it's incomplete if you have to go to supplementary material to actually understand it.
And then
But perhaps they were going for something else. I don't think that's the case here. It looks like they
no.
were trying to make kind of a straightforward show where there might be some avant-garde type of
Mhm,
film that like you do have to actually like go into it. That's not like what we're
mhm.
dealing with here.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Would you want to know, like, the creator's intent in this scene, or would you kinda more, how would you analyze media? Would you rather know the author's intent of it, or would you rather kind of just go off of what is actually there?
I go off of what is actually there. Now, if I'm thinking, say that this is the thing I actually cover in my video, is there's the way that the show ends, where there's an ambiguous ending as to whether Britt decides to serve his jail sentence for assaulting Gavin, or if he decides to try to jump the border with Hank. Now, the show ends right there, and we don't get a definitive answer as to what they decide to do. However, there has been stuff that they've come out with, like they've said since then, that if they got to do a season 2, Britt would have chosen jail. So the thing is that this isn't designed to be an ambiguous ending. It was supposed to be a cliffhanger before a second season, right?
Yeah.
So they had a plan for a second season, and that included that entailed Britt going to jail. That's how it had to go down, according to them.
But the only way that you could know that is that kind of like paratext thing.
Right.
So do you hold that as canon, or do you just think it is like it just left it ambiguous, like he could either hop the border or go to jail?
I think it's left ambiguous, and I don't think that it is like that is canon just because they say so. Now the problem is when Fringy then says, "Well, in my head, because I hate these guys, they went to the border and then they got arrested there." It's like, okay, you're just being bad faith. Then you are literally saying, "I'm going to just imagine that your character did the opposite of what you were planning on them to do." Right? I'm going to use the scene that you wrote with the understanding of this is to show that he's growing as a character. I'm going to pretend that really your intent here was for them to avoid paying the consequences for their actions, and I'm going to morally condemn them. And then I'm going to say the writers don't think that they like that's just bad faith. I'm sorry. That's just like you're literally ignoring that the writer was that the writer was knowledgeable that what Britt did here was wrong, and you're pretending like you're literally rewriting history in your head in order for things to fit that narrative. However, if someone wants to just simply say like, well, I think that Britt would have chosen Mexico instead, and here's why, is like they can make that argument if they want to, if they can, pull the proper references, or they could just go like, well, he's just, he's not really ready to really grow. Like, he regresses in a way that like a lot of people would regress. If that's how they truly believe, is like, well, that's fair enough. But it's very weird to then attach a moral condemnation of the characters and the author with that. It's just going off of like, well, what do you believe based on what's in the show? What would be the most in character thing for Britt to do? So it's not well, Fringy is wrong because the writers say this. It's just like, well, he's being bad faith because the writers have made this clear. And so Fringy's defense for what he says there, where he says, well, in my head canon, is like, I don't care what's in your head canon. It's
kind of a weird side tangent. Do you ever go off of like headcanon or anything like that? Like, I know I do, like with the prequels, I got to go with like the Darth Jar Jar thing, but that's just because I don't like them. It's the only way that I can enjoy that. But I don't know if I honestly do that for any other movie.
I guess it kind of depends. What I really need is like, I need there to be like something that supports that headcanon to be present, right?
Fair enough.
Yeah. So okay. But I want to like quickly take this point on point C, because I'm still stuck on point C here. If the writers are simply not aware that this is rape, it doesn't magically mean that they wrote in a scene that isn't rape. What it means is they made a mistake, and it would be likely a product of the time that the show was set in, that they just didn't recognize that this was rape. Now, does this mean that they had bad intentions? No. Easy to just say, probably just a mistake. Does this mean that what happens in the show, like in terms of cause and effect, how the characters act, is that now broken, right? The answer is no. Because now I think I said this before we started recording, but like if the character in question who's raped for this action is framed as like villainous, basically, as like she's like, yeah, I cheated on him and I have no regrets for something. It's like, if that's how they were mean to, this would be a major problem. Now, this is not what happens in the show. She like under the pretense that she made a mistake, that she wasn't raped, but she believes that this is a mistake. She is unbelievably stricken with remorse about this. There's a whole scene the day after this happens, after she wakes up, when she's just crying her eyes out to her friend Hank about this. The other protagonist is like, I don't know what to do. And I don't know how one is able to watch this scene, just watch this scene and pay attention to this performance and think Katie is a terrible person. She is an awful person. She's an awful girlfriend. A person with a working empathetic bone in their body is able to see this and be like, she clearly regrets this. She feels really bad about this. She's not a bad person. In the same sense, another thing I said was, we obviously think that there's a difference between someone who like murders someone in when Derek Vineyard curb stomps that dude in American History X, and he's proud of it right after he does this, right? There's that versus Jesse Pinkman, the gun in his hand quivering as he's like shaking uncontrollably, tears welling up in his eyes. He cannot believe that he has to do this. He doesn't want to do this. The whole next season is about him having a mental breakdown as a result of doing this. When he kills Gail Bedecker, is like, so is Jesse the same, morally speaking, as Derek Vineyard is in this flashback in American History X? It's like, obviously no. Obviously no. There's context here that's being ignored. And that's what EFAP did, was they ignored the part. It's like they cut out everything in Breaking Bad of Jesse feeling bad about killing Gail in order to vilify him for it. Like that really is the equivalent of what they did with Katie here.
Yeah, and it's pretty egregious. This was specifically the part where a lot of the context was kind of cut out to make her seem like she is more confessing to, I did this, as opposed to, I mean, it's nowhere on the same level, but I've gotten like my car broken into. That's definitely a violation, much lower, not nearly on the same thing, but I've definitely blamed myself for like I left my car here. Like, why would I have parked it there? Like, this is just so stupid. Like, there is a lot of self-blaming that would go on, and that's how I interpreted that scene. Not that it was like a big confession, and just they're upset that they are this way. I'm assuming that would be the crying as. I don't know. I guess I just don't understand fully their interpretation of it, but I don't know. When you do end up watching the portion in Southpaw's video, it is kind of damning. This second part that definitely has to have context edited out of it to then fit the kind of narrative that is being pushed, that she is the bad one in this and that it was intentional.
Like I first show the scene, right? I give people a chance to see the scene. I'm like, now let's see how EFAP talked about this. And I show that, and it's really bad. It's grotesque, I'd say, basically, because I mean, after I talk about this for about like 25 minutes or so, I gave the mic over to my friend Jolly Chap. I play a clip of him talking about it on the stream with me and SK. And he says at the start of this is like, to say that he left out context there is just a supreme understatement. This is lying. And with a lot of things in there, like when they talk about the show, is like, that is true. A lot of it is you are omitting so much context. You're omitting so many scenes that just batter your points. It's impossible to conclude otherwise. And then the thing that happens with the I mean, after I show their initial comments, I'm like, hey, let's have a look at how they substantiated this claim on their server. Let's how because they posted two whole clips from the show on their server, and these are the two clips. Let's have a look at these clips. And I first play the 20-second clip of the first scene that I show, and I was like, oh, he omitted like most of that stuff that I left that I put in there. That you're watching this, you might be like, oh, poor Katie, she feels really bad about this, and he left all that shit out. That's interesting. And then the next thing I do is like,
it really seems to change it.
Yeah. And the next thing I do is like, okay, let's look at the second clip that he looked at. And so I play the second clip first without showing the full scene, but then I show the full scene after the clip. And then this was actually one of the things where it wasn't originally. I don't think I had this in the video a month ago, but then I recently changed it where I was like, wait a minute, let's look at how he clipped the second scene again. And I show that right before his clip starts, she says, I didn't want to hurt you, but that's not in his clip. And then also right after his clip ends, if you go into the show, she says, if you married me, if you'd marry me, you would hate me and you'd hate your life. In which she's not saying ha ha ha, you weren't ready, so I cheated on you and I broke your heart and trust. That's how his fans frame it. It really is like a sense of like, you aren't ready for marriage, and if you marry me, you would hate me. It's kind of like a just like you really aren't mentally prepared for this. It's not like I didn't cheat on you because you're not ready. Like I didn't consciously choose to cheat on you. But she's saying this in a very heated argument, in which people are just known to they lose control of their tempers and they say things that they really shouldn't say.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely, and you illustrate that quite well in that portion as well. Kind of the in a heated moment, are you necessarily going to be? I don't know. It's not dishonest, but I like the phrasing that you have in there and kind of the way that you lay that out. But I know I've definitely said things in an argument that they don't reflect my true feelings. It's kind of more in that moment, if again the elephant rider thing, if that elephant is taken over, I could totally see not necessarily telling my entire intentions, but kind of just saying something inflammatory. And it does also seem like she is trying to get him to understand that he's not ready and he should not be interested in this relationship anymore. But again, and it might be me the way that I'm interpreting it, but it is kind of that she feels responsible for it. It not necessarily that she made it happen, but that's just often how victims feel afterwards. And it's one way of being like, "No, I did this," and then pushing him away. That does seem quite real to me, but I can understand how somebody would interpret that kind of just on a single level, saying, "No, she's literally saying like you weren't ready for this," so they're kind of interpreting that as she did this on purpose. I think that's a really uncharitable way of interpreting
Super.
it.
It's super uncharitable and
But
just
this
like
goes beyond that.
yeah,
It's not that you show in the video.
yeah. It's
But I could understand somebody being uncharitable. This seems to be beyond.
yeah, it's super uncharitable. It's very easy for them to exploit a person's, I guess, willingness to be uncharitable. When I show the context that they clipped out, and again, I just have to highlight is like, it's one thing if you're just like recalling with a kind of bad memory, or like you weren't paying attention, you're just verbally recalling it, and you're just doing a bad job. That's one thing. It's entirely different when you then go to your computer, you open up the episode, you clip out that scene, and you make sure to omit any context that goes against what you're saying, especially in the context of Discord, where I'm pretty sure that you can post videos up to about 2 minutes on Discord, which is more than enough time that it would have like they could have shown the full 2 minute scene of her talking to Hank in the diner. They could have shown the full 2 minute scene of her arguing with Britt. I don't know why they didn't do that though. Well, I mean, I do. I think I know I do.
Yeah. It does kind of walk people down their interpretation of it. If you do exclude those, it definitely would be easier to jump to that conclusion.
It's where it's like
It seems intentional.
it very. I mean, I think it's like it's kind of undeniable.
I don't think there's any way that you could accidentally clip out context like that. It's not like it was just the middle of the scene. It looks like there were definite choices made there. It doesn't seem like it was just an accident.
They didn't like start or end the clip like in the middle of a sentence or like in the middle of a word.
Yeah.
She doesn't get cut off in the middle of the speech. It's like no, it's unbelievable. It's that like it's a mixture of that, and it's also like there's some things that they say in which there is context that's present in the show that breaks down their points that they are just willfully ignoring or dismissing.
That's when it definitely appears, and you include that context, and it kind of shows it black and white.
Yeah. What was the? I mean, I guess the really. Okay. So the next thing. So still haven't finished point C yet, but let's just. Let me finally cap this off.
It's a big point.
Yeah, it is a big point. So even if this doesn't at all hurt cause and effect in the show, we can still say this is a valid criticism to make of the show. That this aspect of it just hasn't aged all that well, but it could have been a whole lot worse. So here's the thing. This is not a criticism that EFAP made. It's not like EFAP found a valid criticism. They didn't. In fact, they missed a valid point and then complained, I guess, that the show wasn't vilifying Katie enough. When I'm saying the show would have been a whole lot worse if it did vilify her. So like if people really want to make this argument of like, oh well, this is an actual issue, like sure, it's an actual issue that EFAP missed. So they're even less inept. Sorry, so they're even more inept as critics. I don't see this as a very big W. You know, I'm not saying that the show is perfect, that it is without flaws, but like all these things that they are complaining about aren't. I'm telling you, categorically are not flaws. I think I point out like 5 different actual issues in the show across my video. It's like, well, this is an actual contrivance here. Oh, look, you know, the detective, he picked up evidence with his pen. Only TV cops do that, you know, that sort of thing. It's like, yeah, these are actual problems, and they're not problems that they ever talk about on their streams. It's beyond strange.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I have seen sort of touching on it, like kind of the whole. You're right, like not specifically, and it does feel like if you're going to call out some very minute details, that would be something that you know, you'd have to kind of call out as well.
Mm-hmm.
It does not seem like that's what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it just seems egregious with this one scene. Yeah, this is the one that really kind of hit the hardest.
Oh,
to me.
Absolutely.
I think that's kind of why we've focused on this so much.
Yeah, and then I mean, their fan base. This is the thing, is like it's easily the most inflammatory thing. Like, oh, you called them rape apologists. Oh, you called them victim blamers. Yada yada. And it's like, why did I do that? Would you like to understand why? I mean, I've dealt with people who really do start off being like, why did you call them rape apologists? Why did you call them victim blamers? And then I show them the scene in the show, and then I show them what EFAP said, and then I show the deceptive entities. Like, oh, that's kind of it. There's a section where
just it sounds like such a heavy accusation, and it's you know, I could understand people being somewhat skeptical about it. So
especially if they don't trust
be
me.
skeptical, but just watch it. Watch that portion.
If they trust,
for yourself.
Yeah, especially if you trust EFAP and you don't trust me, you can absolutely be skeptical. But like, watch the video, get to the 2-hour mark of my video, and then just watch for the next 30 minutes. That's all I can say is like, let me make my case. If I'm wrong, then argue why I'm wrong. But don't be like, oh, you call them rape apologists, or oh, you call them victim blamers, as if it is just off limits to say that someone victim blamed when they factually victim blamed.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's I talk about it at the, I think like 2-hour and 3-minute mark is where I really began talking about it, and it goes for the next 30 minutes basically. It's you know, as a section of my video, it used to be about like 5 minutes long, because this video used to be 87 minutes. Like the very first draft of the video, which I think I shared with you.
I don't think you could get all the detail and like show what you're talking about. It is a little bit more, trust me, with a pared down version of it, where this kind of, I don't know if I'd say painstakingly, but it does seem like you took like a fine tooth comb and are really kind of you really show a lot of detail and a lot of evidence here. I think your argument is quite sound here. I think you've proved a lot of your points, and then your willingness to, okay, if I'm wrong, show me, and then let's talk about it. That just that to me kind of sealed it. So I really hope people do go into this with an open mind, and you know, just literally watch the argument that's put in front of them, and just decide.
No personal attacks. No, why are you talking about this too? It's like, well, I mean, I say this in, I wrote this down. I think it's really important to say this. The reason that folks care about this, that I care about this, and that someone like Gray cares about this, is if you are actually interested in honest discussions. This situation is where it is quite unambiguous that Mueller and EFAP, Mueller's followers, Mueller's friends, with this situation, they entirely gave away the game. That they're not actually about that. They are not serious people who are ready or truly willing to be taken seriously. Because when you want to be taken seriously, what's going to happen is you are going to open yourself up to having your claims seriously challenged, and they might be challenged in a pretty harsh and pretty brutal way. And you need to be ready for that, right? But all that Mahler's fans have to answer to all of this is just personal attacks and, well, I don't care. And the reality is, if this was about Kenobi, if this was about Quantumania, or The Rise of Skywalker, I don't think that Mahler's fans would have had any issue with letting me make this thing and make a fucking fool of myself. Because those things are fucking terrible. But I'm not here to talk about Marvel or Star Wars.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a much more personal issue to you than just talking about a blockbuster series or just talking about a TV show that meant something to you. I don't know. I just kind of had heard that narrative that, just this was something that you cared about. They didn't like it, so that's what blew it up. That doesn't appear to be the case. And yeah, I know when I first contacted you, I told you I want to apologize to you that I bought this narrative, even though I didn't spread it to anybody else. I know I definitely was like, yeah, whatever, and I kind of dismissed the whole thing. But this is going to be an uphill battle for you. This is going to be really hard to, like you said, a lot of the people are just saying they don't care, and maybe they won't take the time to look into this. Instead, they get the entertainment that they are looking from the creators, so they don't want to look any further into it. And I think that's a shame. You're definitely going to run into that. It would take somebody to actually, make a move and then take some time to actually watch this and look into it to understand what's happening here. And I don't know. I think that's a big ask. So I'm sorry. It's definitely like a, an uphill battle that you're going on here.
Totally.
But
well,
yeah, it's
the other thing.
Sorry, go right ahead.
Well, the other thing I was thinking of, right, was I've seen people just consistently call this is a sacred cow. It's like, well, why is this why are you saying this is a sacred cow? It's like, well, because you care about it. I was like, so a sacred cow isn't something you merely care about. It has to be like you hold it above scrutiny. You think that this thing basically shouldn't be criticized, or you are holding very obviously different standards to protect this thing, basically, right? To not have to criticize it. And I just find it really interesting because I highlight in this video that Civil War is a bit of a sacred cow to these guys. I point out some very obvious issues in this movie that these guys just you literally point it out to these guys and they just ignore it. Now, no, you basically have to act as though this thing is above scrutiny. And, not personally wanting to participate in such a discussion doesn't mean that you don't think that people ought to have those discussions. It just means you don't want to partake in it yourself. So I've begun work on another script because I'm not always at my computer, so I'm oftentimes not able to work on the video itself. So I've begun work on my next script, and my next script is going to be talking about one episode of Batman the Animated Series, and
nice.
Nerdrotic's response to the idea that I have a hot take on that show, because I have have you heard of it?
So I kind of familiar with it, but I'm not sure if everyone is. Would you kind of want to go over what your hot take is?
My hot take on Batman the Animated Series is that it is a show with 19 solid episodes, 19 episodes ranging from good to great out of 109, the rest of which are
really?
Not great. Yeah.
So I haven't revisited it since forever. But I just have nostalgia goggles. I just remember it being so great, and then Kevin Conroy, just to me, that is the voice of Batman.
Oh, he's great in the show. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking.
No, for sure.
I am not knocking any of the voices.
No, and it doesn't sound like you're saying it's a bad show or anything like that. But wow, I just would have thought so many more of them were good to great. I mean, I know that there are meme ones. There are quite a few clips of the animated series. Where Batman does quite fun things. So I know there's weird moments in there.
Well, you know what?
I kind of don't want to revisit it.
You don't.
Oh, sorry.
Wait,
just to ruin the nostalgia in my mind is all I mean. In a way, I kind of want to hold it up on its pedestal, but I know it's not above criticism. Like I
Yeah.
remember criticizing certain parts of it when I saw it originally.
Well, so then I won't really make any of my criticisms clear on this stream. Then, out of respect for that.
Oh no, no, no.
So
You can. I just I have kind of an urge to protect it because I have a nostalgia thing. But yeah, no, I don't want to live in a false world. I do like the whole truth thing, like we were talking about. So no, no, please feel free to criticize it. I'm not going to like plug my ears or anything like that. And I don't think we need to treat the audience like children or anything like that. Like they can't hear the argument or anything like that.
right.
I would love to hear your argument on it. Just in the back of my mind, it's like, but this is good. Like let's not ruin this.
Mhm.
Is kind of what I have. So I'm wondering if that whole I don't know, sacred cow thing isn't just that kind of a fear that maybe it's not as good as I remember or something like that.
Well, so here's what I say. So I'll read this out for my script, and it's this isn't going over any actual arguments, because what I do is I first talk about Heart of Ice, and I conclude that it is like a 2 out of 10 writing wise if we're using the same standard that EFAP used with everything else, right?
Huh. Again, I don't remember everything in that, but wow, since I still like remember the episode, I could just from using that title, it's like, oh, I know which one you're talking about. I would have thought better than 2. Like it definitely stuck with me, but I'd be interested to hear
I mean,
where you're going with this.
would you like to go through the episode with me sometime? Because I'd absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would. I haven't it's honestly been, I don't even know how long, like over a decade since I've even watched any of it, and definitely didn't go through like
Okay.
a lot of that, but I do remember that episode, Heart of Ice.
Okay, so
interesting.
So you know what? Here's what I could do. I could read out basically a paragraph where I'm summing up the utterly, like, what I perceive to be an utterly broken chain of cause and effect that leads to Batman defeating Mr. Freeze, right? I could go ahead and read this out. Like, here's my argument, right? Like, this is like the really summarized version. Do you want to read that first?
Yeah, sure. Okay. I'm totally down.
So I say, so with a thermos full of chicken soup that at this point should not be hot enough to break even regular glass, as it was inside
a thermos,
as it was inside
super
of a
thermos.
It was inside of a bottomless compartment of Batman's utility belt that has been kept inside either the security office or this warehouse at freezing temperatures. A utility belt that Freeze had absolutely no reason to bring along with him instead of just leaving it at his hideout after he went back to get his big cannon. After he took this utility belt off of Batman and neither killed him, nor unmasked him, nor left him sufficiently trapped in ice with anything tougher than a pair of little ice handcuffs, after getting the drop on him because he magically knew Batman was inside GothCorp and had no other known reason for being inside the building, based on the fact that he didn't just directly go to kill Boyle after freezing Batman, who he got the drop on because the world's greatest detective left the door unlocked behind him while changing out of his perfectly acceptable disguise as a security guard so he could watch an incriminating security tape that Boyle has no reason to keep around instead of just destroying. Batman defeats Mr. Freeze because the glass that Freeze's helmet is made out of is no thicker than your average drinking glass, as evidenced by the fact that it is this vulnerable to thermal shock, even though it is clearly able to withstand direct punches from Batman, who is a lot, and I mean a lot, stronger than the average person, based purely off of feats he achieves in this episode alone. It is also worth mentioning that the series of contrivances could have been avoided entirely if Batman had simply coaxed Johnny, the guy that the henchman that freezes his legs, right, into giving up the location of Freeze's hideout by using the fact that he saved Johnny's life while his former boss clearly didn't care for him as leverage, as a semi-competent detective would have done. So this is basically like at the climax of going over all of these points. I go into like full detail on all these things. But it's like, right, so just pay attention to this chain. And it's like, this doesn't work. So
fair enough.
I
remember it being entertaining, but I was like, a kid at the time. But
absolutely.
I guess just the chicken soup alone and the utility belt, that does seem a little far-fetched. I guess you could have anything. It's no shark repellent, but
wait until
wait
until we actually watch the episode and you actually like have it in front of you. Now, and if people want to criticize,
I remember it being like on a different level than like Batman and Robin or whatever. Like I remember like, oh come on, that Mr. Freeze is just. But come on, like the animated series, like that was where that's weird. Apparently, I'm really looking at this with nostalgia goggles.
Well, I
didn't remember all of that. That sounds a little bit more ridiculous than the bat skates.
Well, I front load this by saying like this isn't a hate video. I think that there's good episodes of this show. I just think that like if you want to be consistent with how EFAP generally criticizes things, This isn't nearly as good as people gas it up to be. Now, what I say, so after I go over this, I'm like, okay, now let's look at how Nerdrotic defended this. And we can go through that at another point, I guess, like another stream. Nerdrotic makes a lot of strange defenses that are very contradictory with one another.
Is it possibly coming from like a nostalgia lens as well? I mean, I can just understand, you know, kind of the tribalism. Like, I love Batman, so no.
Well, he basically
that sucks. I feel like I was kind of falling into that at the beginning of this section of the conversation as well.
Well, he basically says like, I'm just wrong to simply say it's not good without hearing out my arguments, and so it's like, okay, so for him, he's basically acting like, well, this show is good because everyone says it is. And he says it's disingenuous to say that something is objectively bad, which I never called it objectively bad. But then he's like, well, the show is objectively good. It's like, okay, so can you objectively assess
so you can't say it's objectively bad, but you can say it's subjective. Yeah, that does seem like a bit of a double standard. You can only objectively say it's good.
Yeah, so
yeah,
I go
seems like no standard.
I go through all of this, and I'm like, look, I said this in my last video. I said, you know, my last video being the one I'm about to release. I alluded to it in my video on Spider-Man 2, and I'm repeating it here. It is fine to have blind spots for what you are biased towards. I have developed blind spots for what it is that I like and just miss problems that either I or someone else spots later. In a lot of people's cases, this might be because of some sort of personal, emotional connection to it. In Gary's case with BTAS, this helped him get through a difficult period in his life. And look, as someone with absolutely no personal respect for Gary, he's entirely entitled to have his own perception of the show. No one is holding a gun to his head and forcing him to have someone explain why his favorite cartoon he has a sentimental attachment to isn't as good as he thinks it is. I'm not doing that anyways. Not personally wanting to get involved in such discussions doesn't mean that you think something is above scrutiny. It is simply withdrawing yourself from having a discussion where you don't believe that you can be unbiased. It's fine to set those little boundaries, to personally abstain. You know, I don't really care to talk about John Wick 3 in a particularly critical manner because it was the last movie I got to see with my dad before he died. Doesn't mean I don't think that anyone should be allowed to talk about why they think it's terrible, though. Some things are just going to be meaningful in a sentimental manner to people, and these could be anything. The Last Jedi is a movie that I don't particularly like, but it could have similar sentimental value to anyone out there in my audience, and they're entitled to not want to really involve themselves in discussions about it. It's far more preferable for them to just sit this one out than shit the whole place up for everyone who is interested in dissecting the stuff. And EFAP's fan base doesn't seem to understand this incredibly basic concept because they keep saying that terriers is a sacred cow.
And I would like to point out, I was going to say, that's kind of the accusation that has been lobbed at you, but it does seem like you're willing to actually like explore, like, well, is this a problem with it? And even in that like initial watch party, like you were kind of exploring that with them. You were never just saying like, no, that's not true. Like, you know, fingers in your ears, like not listening. In fact, you seem to accept like a few of the things like on the spot and then kind of realize afterwards, like that's not like, for instance, what they had accused you of saying. So I don't know. It seems different. So I know that you were accused of that. I just want to make sure that, it does not appear to be what you're doing here with Harriers. It looks like you're willing to explore any sort of criticism of it.
Oh,
that does not.
I'm the one who's obsessed with the arguments now. Like I want the references. like argue with me based on the facts or the evidence, please. And this is just a thing that you'll notice in much of what I point out in this video, because there's parts where I'm reading out comments said to me. It's like, this isn't an argument. This doesn't say why I'm wrong. This is just calling me names or making fun of my stroke or some seriously depressive thoughts I had as a result of how I was treated, or
which is just over the line. I understand it's the internet, and you know, they have no lines, but come on, that seems uncalled for disagreeing on something else. It's not like you. I know it's,
I never did that to them.
It's never a matter of retaliation, but it seems like it's always escalation. So I don't know. That's one of the reasons why I really strive to get against tribalism. I know I kind of started this so that I'm in your camp. That wouldn't be, you know, I just have chosen a side, and no matter what you do, like, you know, I've looked at the evidence, and I really do agree with what you're saying here. It looks like you are on a mission of truth and to, you know, kind of spread that truth. So, I just really kind of hate that tribalistic, my side, anything we do is okay. That's kind of one of the issues that I have with the fandom initiative. It seems very tribal, and they're willing to, you know, forgive discretions on their side, yet call it out on the other side. I hadn't previously seen that here. It did seem like it was more straightforward, and just this whole situation and your you know, documentation of everything has really kind of opened my eyes to this.
So,
but I I was never like against EFAP or anything like that
Mhm.
before. I'd actually been quite on their side, but not like a super fan or anything like that. Just
Mhm.
I'd catch their appearances on other shows. Really enjoyed it. The few videos I had seen, I really enjoyed them,
Mhm.
and they seem like fair, as they were calling it, objective criticism.
Yeah.
I don't know that I objectively was looking at it at the time because kind of what's happened here has really made me kind of question that. So I would
Mhm.
like to look back at some of what I've seen, but I don't think they are bad people or anything like that. I still have gotten a lot of entertainment. I just, yeah, I think this situation they really did not treat you fairly.
I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
continue and I go, so after I like highlight, it's fine to have, just not want to talk about this stuff yourself. It's fine. That's totally fine. I then say, however, Gary is now trying to argue against someone who wishes to argue that BTAS just isn't as good as he says it is, not based on having looked at any of my arguments and assessing the validity of any of them, and is trying to basically say that this perspective is, by default, not worth any serious consideration. Gary chose to use his platform to say to his audience that I shouldn't criticize this show, that it is off limits to criticize. And that is some sacred bullshit. Now, consider the
That does seem like it.
yeah, consider the arguments that I presented against this one highly acclaimed episode of B-Test in this video that maybe you haven't heard of before. Even if you believe you might have counters for some of these points, what is the inherent problem with observing these perceived problems and talking about them? If this episode of the show truly stands up to scrutiny, then surely there are references that you can point to that account for what I've observed. The reality is, there isn't one. There isn't an inherent problem with pointing this stuff out, right? I'm allowed to express what I sincerely believe to be issues in what I'm watching, the same as I would with any piece of media that would be completely uncontroversial for me to pick apart for silly inconsistencies. And if you don't like that, if you'd rather not hear my criticisms out, that's fine. Just don't go around blabbing that I'm totally wrong, despite having no idea what my arguments might be, and thus no particular argument for why I'd be wrong. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah,
It just seems so uh, strange to say you shouldn't be doing this as opposed to I don't want to listen to this.
yeah,
I can understand, I'm not going to listen to your criticism. This is something that I hold sacred,
mhm,
so I'm just going to bow out over here. But that doesn't seem to be what's going on
right.
there. It seemed to be you can't do
I'm not.
this. That seems a
Yeah,
little it's
you're not
different.
obligated to hear out, someone rip into something you like. I'm not entitled to people
Mhm.
hearing me out. But it's like if you're going to engage in my arguments and then you're going to tell me, no, you can't do this because it's a classic and everyone agrees, is like, that's a sacred cow, dude. Right there. My argument isn't that Terriers is good because most people that have seen it say it's good. It's like, well, it's more like, well,
Mhm.
let's go into why it's good. Let's go into why people are probably saying it's good, right? And that's really the whole point of this video, is just like, it really is just supposed to hold their feet to the fire on what they claim is in the show or how the law functions, or the arguments that they make that are extremely fallacious. Like I will always say, the characters aren't that bad of people. Britt nearly killed a man. The characters aren't that bad of people. Yes, and the show said it was bad, but that doesn't mean the characters don't do good. They help people out for money, yes? People need dinners on their table. They even do cases where money isn't involved, like the one with the amnesia kid. You said they weren't bad people. No, Fringy, you illiterate fuckwit. He said they aren't that bad of people. Learn to fucking read. And also, the show doesn't meaningfully acknowledge their wrongdoing. The show doesn't seem to even appreciate that framing a man for murder because you suspect they did it is morally wrong. I'm really, this is the thing, is that I was really drawn. Mahler really appealed to me because he seemed like a guy who wanted to argue based on the references.
For sure. And that's kind of what I'd seen in the past. So I don't know. This whole situation, I don't know. I guess that's why I was so willing to believe kind of the narrative that had come out.
Yeah. It really seems like either he was always like this, really, and the mask just came off, or somewhere along the way he changed and it wasn't for the better.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at, basically. And people want me to shut up. Is like, well, I don't know. This fan base needs to grow up and learn how to make an argument, how to make it like an actual argument.
Well, the thing is, like, I've definitely heard them do that in the past. That's why, I don't know, that I'm hoping this is like some sort of one-off. That was why I was kind of asking, like, have you seen them do this in other things? Have I just been blind to it? Because
Mhm.
I thought I had seen a lot of good faith arguments and kind of objective criticism about certain projects, but just kind of or properties,
Mm.
but just the way that this was approached is just I don't know. Especially when it's something that was brought to them by a friend. It just I don't know. Maybe I'm predisposed or biased my own way. The ones that I've checked out
Mm.
and kind of the notion that I had of because usually I'd watch one on something that I've already seen before, so
Mm.
I'd kind of already had my opinion, and perhaps some of their opinion was kind of along the one that I already had, so I
Yeah.
was just more willing to accept it. Just I don't know. I'm hoping for some reason this is a one-off thing because I know I've enjoyed their content in the past, but I just don't know why this would be one-off to someone that they're like friends
Mm.
with that is part of the group. It just seems so odd to
Well,
me.
I
This whole situation seems
I
strange.
highlight like I've watched things with Evan, with my friend Evan. We've done watch parties, stuff I don't like really care for. But it didn't spark a big argument. I didn't like try to point to like why it's bad. I was like, that wasn't really my cup of tea, and that was it. And that's all it
Yeah.
really had to be. It didn't have to be a big thing. And especially given like he was my friend showing me something, and there's like a degree of emotional intelligence to be expected in a situation like that, as opposed to adversarial person who thinks that Kenobi is good is trying to show you Kenobi to prove why you're wrong, and they think that you're an
Mhm.
idiot. Is like, so at that point, I think it's fair to say if they've already drawn first blood, like sure, go ahead and argue with them. It's very strange for them to um, go into this in the manner that they had. Um,
Yeah.
and especially given just like repeated attempts to not make this into a big thing. I because I was just like, yeah, dealing with people who are just arguing in bad faith like this, it's frustrating. It is frustrating. But they really seem like they wanted a fight. That's really what it comes down to. Is it feels like they wanted a fight as long as they believe that they were going to win.
Mhm. It definitely seems like things are also stacked
Mm.
in order to get perception on their side as well. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it was a fair fight. It seems like the audience was brought into it, and of course, the audience is going to kind of follow on their side instead of
Right.
look at it a little bit more objectively.
I I I,
So yeah, it just
I highlight.
it seems like a bad situation,
Yeah.
and somehow extremely I don't know uncharitable to a friend, which
Mm.
that just it seems odd to me that
It's yeah. It's
you'd escalate that in a watch party,
it's
but
so disturbing on
I
so
don't
many
know.
levels. And
Yeah.
I highlight in the beginning. And this is the because I added a few minutes to the beginning. It's a bit harsher than most of that point, but I'm like, I have 6 hours to prove this, so I don't really care. I'll but the thesis, like one of the core premises of this video, is that a giant portion of this audience, not all of them, but a big enough chunk to be noticeable, is that a lot of these people are just not good at thinking for themselves, because a lot of them will go through the watch party and somehow conclude, well, they must be right. When it's like, no, if you're listening to what they're saying and you're actually paying attention to the show, you're realizing like that doesn't add up. Just because you shout over someone doesn't mean that you're right. It's
Yeah, and then I yeah, with some of those shows, like with it being such a long kind of I don't know video where you're kind of like analyzing a lot of it. Oftentimes, people aren't necessarily watching the screen as well. Oftentimes, I know when I was listening to a lot of EFAB, I wasn't necessarily watching every frame on there. I could see missing a lot of the nuance in this argument if you're not actually watching what happened on screen and you're just kind of hearing the way that they framed it, like this is what just happened. I could also see kind of following along that way, especially with as forceful as they're saying it.
yeah. I think it's a case of like it really feels like the blind sort of leading the blind in this case. Again, it's just like it's going to be a matter of like, well, okay, so were they being are they just really really incompetent, or were they being willfully obtuse and dishonest? And I think I have enough evidence for the latter to confidently say that at this point, even though the video isn't out quite yet. Um, uh, there exists what I could do is I could release a later cut of this video where I don't include any clips of EFAP just contradicting what they've said in the past. The reality
Mm.
is, if I were to release that, it would look like these guys never ever had any grasp on how this works. When the reality is, they know better. They do know better. So,
Well, that's why it seems to me like this is one-off. Again, I'm not familiar with like all of
mhm,
their material, but it's like they've gone over these issues before and have like pointed it out, and you're using clips of it in your video to kind of point. They're familiar with this concept,
mhm,
but they're just not using it here, or they're going against that here.
right.
It just seems strange because like they're obviously familiar with the
Mhm.
concepts and they're using them in their other criticisms. So
Yeah, so, you know what,
I don't know why not
we
here.
can give an example of one of these concepts. So the first real big broader concept of storytelling, well, one of the first, because there's a thing where I'm talking about um, character arcs before like all the
Mhm.
legal sections are like all the legal criticisms are done. Basically, it's really the first big time that I'm pointing out obvious media illiteracy. Um, there's a comparison that I make. Them complaining about Brit at the end of the show, I compare to this is like it's one of my favorite comparisons I make in the video. It's a bit like you watch A Christmas Carol and you complain
Mhm.
that Ebenezer Scrooge is this selfish, greedy, joyless, exploitative old coot. Even after you finish the movie or the book and you've seen the full arc, and you're just like, and you're acting as if the story is endorsing him being a jerk in the beginning.
Being a
Yeah, it's like this is so obviously
I mean,
not
I
how we
guess I
do
could
this.
understand. Yeah, I guess I can understand a version of that if you're going to say like the only way that you could get to being a good person is to be a jerk. So it's saying be a jerk so that you'll then have that transformation. It seems like a weird way to
Mhm.
go, but I don't know. It seems like you're kind of tying yourself at knots to get to there.
Well, I
It seems like you would have to take the arc of the character and where they go to understand what that character is, not just say they are where they
yeah,
started.
I go for Ebenezer Scrooge because it's such a classic and easy to understand. Like it's just
Yeah.
universally regarded as like we know that Ebenezer Scrooge, he's reputable for being a cruel jerk who hates Christmas in the
Hmm.
beginning of the story. But the whole point is he's not that by the end, right? So,
Yeah.
um, uh, and they basically what they say about Brit in Terriers is like if someone were to say that about Scrooge. I'm really not kidding you there. But the next concept that I really break down is so this is after all the legal criticisms are done, and we were like, let's just go through a few more other arguments. And there's like a minimum of 2 more hours left to go in just going through general criticisms of the show that have nothing to do with the law. And the first thing that I bring up is them complaining that of it is convenient that the main character who needs a loan for his house, stumbles upon uh, the they call him the CEO of the mortgage lender. Is like he's the vice president, but whatever.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but he's like he basically offers him a job and says, "Hey, if you do this for me, I'll approve your loan." Now, I'm like, well, so in a story where your main character is struggling with something financially speaking, and then they happen upon this rich benefactor that just like solved all the problems. Is millionaire takes pity on a millionaire or billionaire stranger takes pity on him, so writes him $1 million check or something. Is like, well, that's fucking lame. In this particular show, however, it's like, well, he's being given a chance to get his loan approved by the vice president of this company if he does him a favor. And it's at the beginning of a story. This doesn't resolve a conflict. This is how the premise of the episode starts. This is how he gets, this is how we get the case. That's because this is a private detective show, right? It's a detective show, so
Hmm.
there's a case that they have to work on in each week, and this is how this case begins. And so I'm like, this happens at the very beginning of the episode. This is the inciting incident of the plot. And I highlight where this gets pointed out to Mahler, and he literally scoffs. I mean, he's mocking the idea that the third episode of a TV show can have an inciting incident. And I'm
Yeah.
just kind of stunned by this. Is like, so it's not the inciting incident
I
of the
guess it could be a
show.
definitions thing if you're just thinking like inciting incident as like the start of the arc of like the season.
Mhm.
Like I guess you could kind of use it just that way instead of like episodes, but the fact that it's cut into episodes and the way that they're
Mhm.
presented, I don't know. It does feel uncharitable.
Yeah, that's because the uncharitable way the uncharitable way to read it would be this is the inciting incident of the whole show. It was just like that's
Yeah.
obviously bullshit. However, what the person is obviously meaning is that this is the inciting incident of the storyline that is confined to this episode because this is a show with a very episodic
Yeah.
format. So, and then I point out that they complained about the inciting incident of the first episode too, And I played a clip, and when I was showing this to my friend Sheev, Sheev Talks helped edit this video together, by the way. And after he finished
Nice.
his part of editing the visuals together, I show him this, and he got so angry that within an hour, he had written, recorded, and edited together a new segment that he just did impromptu. And he literally opens with Mahler. Do you know what a fucking inciting incident is? And because in this clip that triggers Sheev, Mahler says that the inciting incident of the show was the first scene we had. Now, an inciting incident can be in the first scene of something. In the case of this show, it really is just showing like, oh, this is just a goofy little job that Hank and Britt are doing. This is their status quo. They're these unlicensed PIs doing this little dog napping thing, right? This isn't what the main plot is about. Mahler is complaining about something that kicks off the main plot, and I highlight this. And so then it's like, it's like first I'm like, no one in their right mind can gets fussy over a story's inciting incident. Then I cut to Mahler complaining about the inciting incident of Avatar. Then I show them complaining about the inciting incident. Acting like there can't be an inciting incident in episode 3, which is insane. And then I show them complaining about the inciting incident of the first episode, and thus the season. That's even more insane. And then I show Sheev, where he kind of expands on what I've already said about what the inciting incident is. And then after he's done, I then show a clip from the EFAP on Dune, in which they make it abundantly clear that they actually know what an inciting incident is.
And that's why this, I don't know, just feels so different to me, because it's like they're familiar with these concepts. So I don't know why treat it completely different in this scenario, especially when it's like, there is actually a tie to this in your group as opposed to, Dune. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I don't think any of them have like a tie to it or anything like that. I don't know. It just seems weird. I don't know why they would go with. I guess I would call it either bad faith or uncharitability in this situation.
So that's the thing, is you say you don't know why, but like, okay, I guess that we can talk about this. So I don't in my this is actually the second script, the second or third version of a script for a video that I've written down. Right, I've had to do a lot of redrafting. In my previous draft, my previous script, I don't have this in my video, but I do outline like okay, so I was criticizing Civil War just a week before they start watching Terriers. I had a conversation with Fringy about Civil War.
Oh,
yeah.
I guess I didn't put the timeline together on that.
Yeah. So it's
even then though. So you think it is sacred cow for all of them though? Like,
yeah. So
it seems like I could understand some of them, but
okay. So this is the interesting thing is, so right here, Greg can attest to this, is he has seen early drafts of the video in which this stuff is present, this information is present. And I highlight like, okay, so I have this conversation with Fringy about Civil War before, like 2 weeks before he watches Terriers, and then I show, like, as part of the same stream where they first talk about Terriers, they are acting like, oh, I don't, I'm not buying that Civil War is actually terrible. And there's a part of the video, again, so this is after the watch party, and this is before they begin really lying about the show and misrepresenting it. I'll never forget this. It's in my video too. Rags makes sure to say after they're like,
I forgot it. I know I watched that part, but well, sorry, apparently it didn't connect. So I'm glad that you're able to kind of explain this to me, because apparently I missed this.
Yeah, because after they're like, oh yeah, I'm not worried about Civil War, and then Rags whispers, they thought Terriers was good. And it's like, and there it is. They just said the quiet part out loud. That's why they're doing this with Terriers, is because they're trying to discredit me because I was going after Civil War, a film that they say is, like I show it in this video, they say it's so good it's suspicious. It's the best film in the MCU. I think, like, based on what,
definitely heard that claim.
Yeah.
So they're saying, like, objectively it's the best?
They think it's objectively the best film in the MCU. And Gray has seen, he's surely seen a part of the video where I'm talking about Civil War with Fringy, and I show something, I bring up something that is like pretty much impossible to defend as a plot point. Zemo, of course, successfully impersonating the psychiatrist, and fooling the entire spy agency, despite not having a disguise that makes him look like the guy. And the guy is official UN personnel. Don't know how one defends this, but I show it in this video, and Fringy does. And he does this just a couple weeks before they watch Terriers. So it's all speculation, basically. So I don't...
Yeah, but it does seem like there is at least a thread to kind of follow there, especially with the comments that were said.
Yeah, without basically like outlining it in the way that I have on stream here, I leave breadcrumbs in the video. Just information is like, just piece this together. This is when he says this. This is when they watch Terriers. Rags being like, they thought Terriers was good. It's like, that's interesting.
Well, I definitely need to rewatch it because I did not pick up those breadcrumbs. Instead, I was just kind of like, oh, what is going on? Like, I just don't understand this reaction to it. Where, now I think I'm starting to understand it a little bit more.
For a lot of people that watch this show, they're like, why this show? Why do they do this over this show? And it's like, the only explanation...
I can totally understand not liking it or thinking it's not like, as highly rated as you would put it. But I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it is like the worst show ever or anything like that. I can't remember the exact way that they phrased it.
One of the worst shows they've ever seen. Bottom 20%. Bottom
one
tier
of the worst
television
shows they've ever seen. Sorry. That was it.
That's the fun thing is at the start of my video, I'm like, okay, so I first introduced what the concept of a gish gallop is, and then I'm like, speaking of which, let's talk about every frame of pause. And then I kind of like introduced every frame of pause, and I would say that I did a pretty neutral, like I was presenting them fairly neutrally in the beginning, right? I'm not talking about like any of their goofy politics or anything like that. I don't talk about the Phantom Menace. I'm just like,
yeah, you seem to be attacking what they're actually saying, not like trying to do like guilt by association or say like these guys have bad views, so they're bad people.
As a matter of fact,
I think those arguments definitely they are not present in this thing. It seems to be here's what they said, and it seems to like show you exactly what they said, and then show you exactly what is in the actual show, and how they're not congruent. But yeah, that was one of the things that I really liked about this. This wasn't like a character attack on them, despite the fact that you totally, there is a lot of fodder out there that you could try and attack them
as
with.
a matter of fact, in basically the back half of my video, there's a section where I acknowledge that there is this stuff about them is like, they hang out with these far-right guys. They must be far-right themselves. And I'm like, well, the truth is a lot more nuanced than that. And I literally have 8 minutes of my video showing them pushing back against as saying something kind of racist about the Asian kid in Wonder Woman 84. So it's like, just think of it this way. I've put my video critiquing these guys on pause for 8 minutes to show them actually pushing back against a racist criticism on their own podcast from one of their friends.
Yeah. Where you could have definitely just shown that and like they're okay with this. I don't know. You could have taken context out of that, and it definitely could be a different type of clip. But it doesn't seem like you're just trying to assassinate their character. So I really like what you've done with your explanation of this.
Yeah,
it doesn't come off in that way.
On the guilt by association thing, I do clarify is like, well, so two things can be true at the same time, right? So, like, just because you are friends with this person doesn't mean that you agree with them. That's absolutely the truth. However, who you do choose to associate with is like, well, I mean, people are going to come to certain conclusions about your character as a result of who you choose to associate with. So in the case of, well, some people in your audience might know that, I was friends with actual fandom in Organized Chaos for a little bit. So they might then have reservations about me because I was willing to be friends with these guys. So why should I expect Southpaw to be any different? It's like, so, because the reality is, with SK and me, when we first sort of ran into these dudes, we didn't truly see what it was about these guys that was bad faith. In fact, when we were friends with them, we would consistently challenge them on what was bad faith about them, and we weren't being given really impressive references or examples of them being bad faith. So the reality is that SK and I have been accused consistently of being bad faith by the same fan base. So what then happens is you have a boy who cried wolf situation, and so it's like, well, SK and I don't take these kinds of accusations seriously unless you actually have like a receipt behind them. And one of the favorite receipts that people use to prove that Organized Chaos was bad faith was an example that I would still say is still a terrible example to use if you want to argue this. But it's a part of his Multiverse of Madness stream, or a Mauler Multiverse of Madness video stream, in which he seeks out a part of the video in which he's trying to like understand
the parents thing.
Yeah, and people were like, "Well, that's bad faith." It's like, no, it's not. He is. I mean,
he's definitely looking for one particular thing, but
is.
he does give credit that it's not there. Okay, so I don't know. It could be more bad faith. He definitely looked through it for that one particular thing, but
I mean,
I don't know. When it wasn't there, he wasn't like saying. I can understand somebody making that accusation. I also don't think that that's necessarily a good example of bad
yeah,
faith.
because
I have seen much more in kind of his reaction videos to people's content where he like will hear half of a sentence, assume it's going one way, and then hear the other half and just kind of act like the first half didn't exist. That to me is more bad
Yes.
faith. It's intentionally misinterpreting it. He was just looking for something that he thought would be there. It wasn't there.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's making a bad assumption about somebody, but it's not necessarily bad faith.
Well, so it's like, so he's made a reasoned assumption based on like Mueller regularly palling around with these guys, right? So he's wondering like, is this something?
He's made an assumption.
Is this something he says here? And it's like, yeah, it's an assumption, but at the very least, like he acknowledges when he's wrong. I don't know how you can then make the case that Mueller and Fringy did that with terriers. So it's like, if you want to complain about bad faith, we're gonna have to have a chat about these guys in particular. And then also, there's a pretty big part of my video where I am reading out what I describe as a fraction of the stuff I've had to look through in the last couple of years, and it's pretty heinous stuff.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah, what you have in there is heinous. I can only imagine the like flooding that you got. Yeah, that has to be horrible.
It's like these aren't downvoted comments either. There's like one particular that's got like over 100 upvotes. Basically, this is stuff where it's like, no, this is the popular sentiment in this community. And so, and then what I say at the end basically is, the next time that you want to cry and seethe about people criticizing you in bad faith, look in the mirror. And it can be true that actual fandom and organized chaos are bad faith. That could absolutely be the case. But if you want to complain about bad faith, I don't see why also defend Mueller and Fringy in this particular case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think it's using the term the wrong way. I can understand
absolutely.
that people thought that he had like a bad intention or was looking to get like a gotcha on him. Like, fine, but that's not like what bad faith means. I think that
It's
would just
not
be
what bad
using
faith
it
means.
incorrectly.
Yeah.
But I do definitely understand people not liking that he's just looking for that one clip, not actually listening to like any sort of criticism that he has about it, just looking to see if this one section has what he's looking for. I don't know. It doesn't seem like the best way to critique something, but he wasn't looking to critique this entire thing. Where I definitely have seen better examples of that exact thing. Of he's supposed to be engaging with what the guy is saying,
Right.
and he's literally intentionally choosing to not either understand that like a sentence has two parts of it and just attacking one. That to me seems like it's egregiously bad faith. But
well,
and then Dane, for instance, he even called it egregiously bad faith the other day when he I think it was like 2 weeks ago now, where he made that image where it was trying to get people to go to this pirate site to pirate ISOM, where he tried to make it look like it came from the company. That seems pretty bad faith. Like, if you just want, it seems like borderline criminal, if not there's a reason why I got the MCA striked or whatever. But I wouldn't use that example, the looking at the parents and Multiverse of Madness as an example of that.
Yeah, because here's the thing, right? Is that the thing to factor in is that organized chaos, Bob, Dane, they don't care about the plot holes and stuff the way that I do, the way that like a lot of Muller's fans do.
For sure.
So these aren't things that are really material to what they think of Multiverse of Madness, anyways. This video isn't doing anything for them. That's fine. Now, some of that could be bad faith. Let's assume that because Greg can testify that I'm basically attacking all the pillars of EFAP's take on terriers, right? Let's assume that I didn't address any of that stuff, and let's assume that they actually made really solid points. However, there was this one thing they did in which they victim blamed a character who was raped. And let's say that was the only thing I chose to address as a means of then ignoring all their other more valid issues. That could be bad faith. Now,
For sure.
what I've actually done is there's 2 hours of just pounding on things that are just blatantly inaccurate, and there's no real like moral attachment to any of this. But then it's like, okay, I've gone on this enough. Let's talk about this now. This is the worst part. And yet, you know what? Gray, you've gone through the part where I'm talking about like how they think the protagonists are evil and everything. There's a lot of moral grandstanding there.
Yeah.
There isn't a single point in that section where I go, well, you victim blamed a rape victim, therefore, who cares? It's like, well, no, let's actually address the substance. I don't have to address any of that to just point out
Yeah.
why this is just incongruent with reality. And but like that irony is there. I pointed out like kind of in the middle of the, like I'm talking about the rape section where it's like, if you're going to deceptively edit it like this, this is going to work against you if you then proceed to try to morally grandstand to your audience later on. But I don't call back to that. I do not call back to that afterwards. I'm like, well, I'll just address this like this like this criticism was never basically made. Now, but if I did only address that criticism and didn't address anything else that they had said, then you could say that's bad faith, I guess. But like in the same sense of, well, by that same token, is it not bad faith to go, well, Southpaw called them rape apologists, therefore I don't have to hear anything else that he had to say? Like,
yeah, it feels like it is, but I don't know if most people hold themselves to that standard. I think, a lot of times you kind of have a preconceived notion and then you just kind of go with it. I know in the beginning I had kind of, again, I'd heard the narrative. I'm not sure from where, but I just kind of decided I don't need to look into this any further. I understand what's going on. And I don't know. It was, I was very mistaken in that.
It was, well, it's one of those things where it's easy to, you hear it through the grapevine and it's like, a lot of people do this. It's just a natural thing to do. But I'm hoping that with this video being out, with everything, with all the arguments being like laid in front, is like, I don't really wish to. I know you said that you want to kind of like move on from talking about Dane and Bob, or like not have to focus on them
for sure. We've got some fun content planned, kind of like it sounds like you have your Batman one next, and then I'm sure you're even thinking of content
Civil
after
War,
that.
I don't want to,
for sure.
I don't want to be the anti-EFAP guy. I don't want that to be my channel. This is like
same, not with EFAP, but same with being like the anti-fandom initiative thing. This is an arc. This is a season, but I do feel like I do need to get some of this stuff out, especially when they're responding. I could only imagine being in your position where not only are you not allowed to respond where the accusations are being made, but they just keep coming up because the audience is so big and they do keep believing this narrative. Again, what kind of prompted this conversation is somebody picked up a thread that, I don't know, was the thread originally from 2 years ago that people just keep kind of coming back to. Anyway, this.
This particular conversation, like
with the Patrick thing, where when they replied, it was to Patrick's. Okay, so it was a couple months ago, and then
actually
it just got brought up again when somebody replied to that same thread.
It was at the beginning of this month, actually, but it got bumped. I was like, I don't know why this got bumped, but like, all right. And then what's so crazy is that the person that Patrick was responding to, that other guy, I can't, I don't remember who, but all I remember is that I then started interacting with him a bit more. And hold on, I'm going through our DMs just to see like, wait, where? Oh, for the sake of the comments, that guy. So he begins making arguments. It was really funny when he was doing this, because he tried to make the argument that if the genders were reversed, if Katie was the one who slept with someone who was sober, that wouldn't have been seen as rape. Now, so here's the best part was, first off, whether it's legally seen as rape, because that was the guy's argument, was it would be legally seen as rape. It's like, well, first off, whether something is legally seen as rape doesn't affect whether it is ontologically rape. Now,
and that might be where kind of people are talking past each other in this, like they might be thinking like, well, are they really past like that legal limit or whatever, so they're not legal? But I mean, it's if you're looking at this ethically, like the person is not in the right state of mind to consent. Right. I can totally understand that argument and where you're coming from with that.
Now this,
I think they're kind of thinking more legally, like there is a gray area where there's probably a threshold where you'd have to I don't know exactly. I'm sure it's different in different jurisdictions, even because it's not like you have a breathalyzer to see if you can consent, but
Right.
obviously there is a line where you're too inebriated to consent to
Now
anything.
this guy,
So I don't
well,
know.
so this guy says that first off, that the clip that I posted suggests that she drove to the professor's place. Now the problem is, like, the show confirms that she had to get a taxi over, like, back to her house because she didn't.
Yeah, so she didn't drive over
So it's
there.
like, okay, so that's just an assumption. That's an assumption. That's a baseless assumption, for one. Then he said, I never said it was my law school, so I represented nothing. I have, however, worked in the justice system for years. And I'm like, okay, so, well, I highlight, I worked in the justice system for years, feels suspiciously similar to, I studied law in university. You wouldn't need to say this if you were an
Yeah.
actual lawyer. You would be saying, I am a licensed criminal attorney. So then he responds to
Well,
that.
do you even have to bring up that qualification as opposed to like, here's why
Right.
it is this way in the law, here's what the law says, as opposed to like, just listen to my opinion. I've been in the legal system for years.
So,
Like, I don't know. That it's a little bit weird. It's not even like a real qualification. It's just believe
well,
me.
here's the best part.
I don't know. I don't like
Here's
that.
the best part. So, and I linked you, like, the tweet that starts this, right? So you can include that on screen if you want. Now he says, I'm not an attorney. I'm a licensed substance use disorder counselor who used to work primarily in the justice system with a dual master's in justice studies with an emphasis on MH law and MH counseling. Specific enough for you? And my rebuttal was, specific enough to know that you don't actually understand that if the genders were reversed, she would be seen as raping him per California Penal Code section 261 subsection A3, which does not declare women exempt from being perpetrators or men from being victims. Is that specific enough for you? And his rebuttal to that was, great if you live in California, I guess. Too bad that women are statistically less likely to be arrested, less likely to be charged, with lower crimes, and less likely to be sentenced for all crimes. And I said, the show that we were talking about is set in California, which should be publicly available information if you Google Terriers FX. So what the fuck are you on about with your original claim that this wouldn't be legally seen as rape if she did it? And he didn't respond to that. Because at that point, it's like, yeah.
It seems like it's more just I have this feeling that she wouldn't be charged, and maybe she wouldn't. Maybe there is more leniency, but I don't know. It's not. He's not saying I don't think she would get the same outcome as a guy. She's literally saying like, it wouldn't be illegal, and it's like that's just
No.
demonstrably false. Perhaps it wouldn't be the same exact outcome, but
Well, this is
I don't know. It just doesn't seem to match his claim at all.
This is the problem. I keep on running into this with people who want to argue about the law. And I'm not a lawyer. I didn't go to university for law.
I am far from a lawyer.
What I've done when I argue about the law is, if I don't know what I'm talking about, I look up what lawyers say. I look up, I would go on the law blogs.
That would probably be a good thing. Either look it up or consult somebody who actually would have some sort of expertise in it, not just I have a feeling based off of outcomes that this is not illegal. I don't know. It does feel like you would need more than just. I have a feeling.
There's a website that you can pay a subscription to have unlimited access to talking to attorneys and asking legal questions.
That would be pretty cool.
You can go on Reddit and look up legal advice. It's like you can seek legal advice anywhere, right? Or I mean, not anywhere, but like you can find actual attorneys to talk to. You can talk to the experts about this, and that's what I do. On very rare occasions that I don't do this first, it's because I actually do know what I'm talking about. And then so this was one of the funniest things. There was a guy on my Discord server who was trying to argue that the criminal histories of the men who Kyle Rittenhouse shot would be relevant to his defense. And I was like, no, they wouldn't be. Like,
I suppose like the one thing is like if they have like a history of it, but even then like it would be case by case whether it would be allowed as like I don't know, like if it pertains to this then maybe, but
no.
There is no like blanket rule that like your background definitely comes on.
Well, so
but it's like they had to argue with like Rittenhouse's like previous statement where he kind of mentioned I can't remember, like I wish I had a gun. I can't remember the exact statement, but like it was controversial whether it would be allowed, and like they had to actually run that by the judge and everything. There's a way that like a background could be, but if you're just talking like blanketly, no, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So my position is that Rittenhouse was defending himself, and the criminal histories of the men who he shot are immaterial to whether that is a fact. And
For sure.
I
I,
was,
I think just kind of like where they were trying to bring in like Kyle's previous statement, if like these guys like regularly went around like
mhm,
hitting people who were down with skateboards or something, like maybe that would
mhm,
count, but it would be very specific, and then you'd
yeah,
have to actually bring that up with the judge and then get that allowed in.
yeah.
Just yeah, you're right. Like their background normally would not.
And in this case, it's so funny because this guy was arguing that they would be. He was actually like vociferously arguing that they would be, and I didn't really like look into what the judge of like presiding over the case decided, but I did get the idea too.
Mhm.
This is fairly late at night. I'm tired. This is the thing is like I'm not firing on all cylinders at all times of the day. It's sometimes you're tired, right?
Mhm.
But
Oh yeah, yeah.
eventually I get the idea is like, wait a minute, what did the judge presiding over the case say? And I looked it up, and the judge literally said exactly what I was saying, which is
Mhm.
no, they're not relevant here. So
Yeah.
it's just one of
It
those.
seems like it would be a very niche thing if
Yeah.
that would be allowed, if it is specifically that. Like, this person's known to go around doing whatever it is. Maybe, but you'd still have to argue it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can't see any reason why they would. But
Mhm,
yeah, of course, this guy isn't going to actually look that up. He's just going to go with like his own
mhm.
notion on that.
Well, it's just
Yeah, that definitely
it,
sucks.
yeah.
It's awesome to see that it was actually put in writing there for
It
you.
was, and that's just an example of like when I argue with someone about the law, I'm not trying to be a know-it-all. I'm, the Dunning Kruger effect thing, right? Where it's like the people who know the least believe they
Yes.
know the most. People who know the most are they're pretty confident in what they know, and people who are in the middle who don't know the least, but they definitely don't know the most. They're pretty accurate in assessing how much they know, and that's where I basically am. Is I keep on saying I'm not a lawyer. However, I do talk to lawyers about this stuff. I parrot what the lawyers say. I trust what the experts say if it makes sense. And on a very rare occasion where I haven't done that first, it is because I happen to know what I'm talking about. I've got an okay head on my shoulders when it comes to this sort of stuff, and um, uh, so to see this guy like just trying to just boldly argue, well, this wouldn't be legally seen as rape, is like,
Yeah.
you're wrong. You're just talking out of your ass here. What are you talking about? And so that's really the fun thing about this video is because the first section of these criticisms about the show have to do with the law, in which there is like it is a like they claim that this is how it works. Like this is a black and white. No, that's not how it works. Um,
Mhm.
so I'm trying to think of like what's
Yeah, and I just love the way that you have it all put together too. It seems to really walk you
it's
through the argument, and then really kind of shows you exactly what was said. And
well,
I don't know,
one of those
it changed my notions
one of
completely.
the most complicated things about this, like the reason why it's taken so long to get this is like again, having to restructure this thing so much in the redrafting phase, and just being like,
Well, and then you just not to like
mhm,
give away anything behind the scenes, but you just had to re-render like a 4-hour version to add the word subsection in there,
yes,
just because you had read the penal section wrong. Like you're going very meticulously with the details on this.
yeah,
That is crazy. Like for me, I would totally just put like a word on there, like subsection was meant to put here.
mhm.
But I don't think you were going about this in a much more professional way, really trying to get this the strongest that it possibly can be, and that's I think it really is effective. And I would just again, if you made it this far, you've probably heard me like 4 times say just watch it. But really, when his video drops, just watch it. You don't have to go in there with any preconceived notions. Go in there skeptical, even if you want
Yeah.
to. But it really lays it out quite
It's
thoroughly.
it's complicated because like they make so many points where it's like, where do I even start? Where do I start with all like the
Yeah.
rape thing is very tempting to like start with this, but it's like, I don't want to poison the well. I don't want to be accused of poisoning the well. The thing with the way in which they complain about how the show frames Hank and Britt, how they totally take their actions out of context to make them more villainous, is also very tempting to do. And I realized like, well, I think the border thing is way funnier as a hook. I thought like the way in which that just gets completely nuked, I think is a really solid hook. The thing with complaining about the main characters, I realized like they say this is their biggest argument against the show. I save it for
Mhm.
last. And that section of the video, I kid you not, over half of it is playing what they say and then just cutting to the show and letting the show speak for itself without any commentary.
Yeah.
Um,
And it really just kind of yeah,
it's
it really illuminates your entire point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't take more than that, but, still, there is much more than that put in this video, and then you do it in quite an entertaining way as well. I did like the, tasteful amount of humor that's put in there. There's some really serious subjects, like, I think even our conversation has focused on some very,
Yeah.
serious subjects, but I do like the way that you are able to put some levity in the video as well,
It's
and then some of your clips that you put in there are just awesome.
it's a huge
I'm a big fan of what you have.
it's been a huge balancing act in terms of like what criticisms do I start with first? What should be the climax, and then also one of the big worries is pacing. So in like the 4-hour version that I sent to Gray, the initial 4-hour version, the section where I go over Civil War stuff kind of happens like in the middle of this point about the border, and it goes for like 15 minutes. There's a lot of great material in there, like the arguments are sound, but it's in the wrong spot in the video. And now, like where that section used to be in like the 45-minute mark of the old video, that section is now like once you hit the 4-hour mark. So it's like pacing is also just incredibly important. Because if it's gonna be 6 hours, you need to be able to like keep people's attention in, right? There's
Yeah, for sure. It's gonna be a struggle. But I like the way that you're doing it. It definitely kept my attention.
I appreciate that greatly. A lot of
Granted, I haven't done the 6-hour version yet, but I do look forward to it.
Yeah, that should be out. So then, in terms of when this thing is gonna be out, I was like, well, in less than a week from when we're recording this, what I'm dealing with right now basically is just I've got audio balancing to do, which is gonna take me like basically I think that it'll take me a day to do the remaining audio balancing because I've gone through the first 4 hours or so.
I was gonna say it's not bad. I mean, like, there's obviously some clips that the audio wasn't the greatest on, but the balancing was great. It wasn't like anything like caught me way off guard or anything like that. So, it doesn't seem like you've got a long way to go on it.
There's some things that I've that's why I was like, it's a little loud here, or it's a little quiet here.
Yeah,
I'm working on even nailing this basically. The section of the video where Jolly speaks about the Katie thing, I added subtitles to in this latest draft. Because Jolly's mic isn't the best at this point, and he speaks for a long time.
Yeah, I think that was the part that I was thinking of when I was saying like there's some parts of the audio quality isn't the greatest, but that's definitely helpful if you got subtitles in there.
Yeah, and the reality is that this is from a live stream. This wasn't a thing that like Jolly recorded for. This was just like this was one of the streams that Gray watched of us going through this, right? And these streams that are currently up because I knew it was like, okay, if I'm going to be going through this, I'm going to be talking about this a lot because I talk about what I work on a lot, right? And people are going to be like, why are you still talking about? Oh my God, why are you hyping up these arguments about terriers? What is so? I'm like, guys, go to these streams if you want a taste of what's to come. These streams that I did with SK, like, I mean, great. As someone you've seen my video, would you say that the streams I did with SK a couple months ago are a fair representation of like? This is kind of what the video is showing, right?
I would say so. I mean, obviously, it would be like a live stream versus like a scripted video.
Right.
You do get you can really refine exactly what's said and then exactly what is shown there. So I mean, like it's like a much more refined version of it. But yes, you do get the arguments. I don't think everything is in a like those streams aren't necessarily 6 hours and aren't like as laser focused as this.
Right.
So I think you're definitely going to get way more out of this video.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to get a taste of it, you see the arguments, you see the openness and willingness to, okay, do you disagree with this? Show me like any sort of evidence for this, or do you just, or do you just like completely just disagree for the sake of you disagree, or perhaps like tribalism or something?
Yeah,
but you're willing to engage with any of them, like on Twitter. You're willing to
absolutely
let them on your stream to actually talk to you.
I wouldn't have been.
I don't know. I really dig that.
I wouldn't have been satisfied with like if these streams were the only things that we did covering these arguments, because the nature is like a live stream isn't going to have the same like really focused flow as this video. Like you'll probably find that like you would probably much rather rewatch, like if you want to like rewatch this destruction of the Terriers take, you'd rather watch this video that I put together than the live streams. But the live streams were just simply, they were there as a way of like, okay, it's going to take me a couple months to get through this. Let's at least have something out there for people to have access to in the time that, because it's going to take me some time to work on this basically. And then of course, like
I'm sure it kind of helps you focus some of your thoughts too,
absolutely.
presenting it to people.
Yeah.
Like it kind of. I know that definitely has helped me before. There's certain concepts that we tried to cover on like
Mhm,
some of the show called Thinkers. We
mhm,
try to kind of tackle a concept.
mhm,
There's definitely been times where like we have like 7 or 8 people on there. I'm not able to quite articulate everything that I want,
mhm,
so I'm able to kind of focus that in another
mhm,
video. I think that definitely helps when you're able to kind of present it to other people and
mhm,
really see how you're explaining it, how it's coming across to them, because it's so personal to you, and you have the backstory. But
mhm,
are you expressing that the same way? Is it impacting them the way that you're trying to make that information stick to them? Definitely the way that you're doing it in the video. It's a lot more. I guess laser focus is what I'd
mhm.
say versus those live streams, but it lays out that same information and you still present it really well in there. And then again, where you're willing to take anybody else on there and actually like
Yeah.
argue any sort of argument with them, walk them through like your position and then walk through theirs. It's just, I don't know. I can't applaud that style of actually like interacting with a detractor. Like that's awesome, man. I really dig it.
What I'm going to admit, this might be terrible timing, but like after this video is up, I have very little interest in arguing further with people because
Fair
this
enough.
video is definitely where it's
You've
like,
done a lot of it.
yeah, like I've done this for 2 years. I've helped deprogram people in real time. You've seen it. Um, I've given people a lot of
I think that
chances.
probably has led to this too,
Yeah.
right? Like, actually being able to, like, deprogram them has kinda shown you, okay, so these arguments are effective, and this way kind of
Yes.
helps to walk them through. I'm sure you've implemented that into your videos,
Yeah.
yeah. So you hopefully you shouldn't have to do it individually after this.
I've had a lot of because this is the thing is I went through the show with a lot of people individually, and we're just looking at this, and it really is just a matter of like refining like what the exact problem with these arguments are. Because again,
Mhm.
these criticisms are bizarre to say the least. When someone's complaining that an inciting incident is convenient, you're like, why is this not a problem? When someone's complaining about something as a convenience, when really it's no bigger of a coincidence than something that you'll see in Joker per se. And that's the thing I point out in this video is they kind of stretch the definition of what a convenience is to the
Mhm.
point where they're criticizing it the same way that Ralph the movie maker criticized Joker. And
Mhm.
it's like I say this in my own words basically, but like there's a big difference between like a major contrivance and your occasional close call or like a little lucky break or something where it's logically plausible, it's likely enough to happen, it really isn't a problem that things play out in this way. Um,
Mhm.
and all stories have this. And then there's a surely enough, there's a clip that you can find on EFAP of them saying exactly the same thing. So it'll be interesting to give EFAPS fans an opportunity to be like, oh, Southpaw is just making up defenses for this show that he would never make for anything else, and then show like, no, this is what EFAP have said in the past. I'm being consistent with what
Mhm.
they have said in the past while defending Joker. So is Joker a sacred cow now? Was Ralph the movie maker criticizing Joker in good faith? Is that what we want to do? you know,
I mean, I guess it could be a sacred cow to any I
it
guess
could.
anyone could hold any particular property up as one.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess it just kinda depends. I guess that whole sacred cow thing is kinda subjective.
Absolutely.
I'm hard pressed to come up with one off the top of my head, but I'm sure I have something that,
I mean,
even, Batman the Animated Series, while it's not, like, my favorite, like, I haven't watched it in years, it still has that nostalgic value, so when you were kinda bringing up that episode, yeah, it kind of instinctually, it was like, "Wait,
it's
but it's good." Like, I remember that episode. I don't know, I can't
it,
so,
it
yeah, I don't know, I think we do this, a certain
yeah.
amount,
It's not a
It's something that, you hold dear, you definitely wanna kinda protect, even if it's, I don't know, perhaps not accurate.
it's not a sacred cow if you just don't care to participate in discussions about it. It's not a sacred cow if you actually have an argument behind what you're saying. It could be a bad
Mm,
argument even, but if you at least think you've got references, right? Are you willing to concede when you're wrong? Um, uh, it's a sacred cow if it crosses over from I don't really care to talk about this myself to you shouldn't talk about this.
yeah, it feels like that line is too far for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I can totally understand excusing yourself from any sort of conversation
Mhm.
or turning it off, but trying to silence somebody else from having that conversation just seems,
That's been my
really a
frustration.
bridge too
That's
far.
been my frustration because, like, that's why literally BTAS fans have basically like Gary said that to me. Fringy accused me of asking them to stop criticizing the show when I never said that. I never actually said that. That's insane. And like
Yeah.
I was willing to hear out their arguments, and that's why I saw what I saw. That's how I saw the victim blaming stuff. It's like maybe they didn't want me to actually look at the arguments. I don't know. Um, uh, it would have been a lot better for them if I hadn't, I guess, but I was willing to. And this is the problem, right? Is like I hope that by the time that it gets to the very end, it's like, oh, so that's why you didn't really want to talk about this, because this is fucking bullshit. This is a huge waste of time. This is like trying to argue with someone. It's like trying to argue with someone that in Lord of the Rings, Sauron didn't really do anything wrong. He was only up to some duplicitous things to get a better future for orcs. It's like,
Yeah, you've got a bunch of really good kind of statements like that where I don't know exactly what you'd call it, like a hyperbolic version. I guess you could make an argument like that, but yeah, it doesn't seem like it seems like you'd have to stretch to make any one of these. But yeah, that part really got me. I think you made some really good examples in that particular case, and yeah, that section really hits home.
When someone is making criticisms like, I don't like that Breaking Bad is endorsing what Walter White does, is like, your take is so delusional. I don't really want to argue about this. It's not that I think Breaking Bad's a sacred cow. It's just like that's so obviously wrong, and it's going to take me forever. Like, if I had a week, I couldn't list every single reason that this doesn't work.
Yeah,
this is such a waste of, and that's how a part of me feels like this has been a waste of time. Like, these are such obviously broken points, and I'm beyond stunned that I've had to to go through this much effort instead of just telling people, as I tried to tell them at the start, watch the show for yourself, please.
Well, I know that's like a silver lining on this whole situation, but it's definitely improved your video making skills. You've had to make, I don't know how many versions of this particular one. You've had to really delve into script writing.
Yeah.
All of this is definitely going to help you with what you do after this, even if
absolutely.
You do have the feelings of this is all for naught. It definitely led to something where it showed you how to construct kind of more of a convincing argument, which will definitely help you, your script writing, your actual like editing, your video making, like everything that you've done here. I don't see how it could be a waste. I could understand feeling like it's so long put into this one thing that like you mentioned, some of these arguments, like, do they really need to be addressed? But as long as you're doing this, like, yes, might as well address everything and then just get everything done. I don't know. I hope it is a feeling of a huge relief once you finally do get this out. And that is, congrats that you're almost there. That's going to be awesome when you do release it. I definitely will be checking it out. Everybody, please check this video out and please go into it as skeptical as you want to. Just watch the whole thing.
I should highlight, Gray actually has a very small cameo in this, in the sense that because I was talking with him shortly after we did the streams, and I was like, because I kept on saying on the streams, like, they lied here. And we kept on getting pushback from people who are like, no, you didn't prove that they lied. You proved that they were wrong. I'm like, come on, bro. I'm sorry. If someone tells me that Legolas raped Arwen in Lord of the Rings, is like, that's a lie. That doesn't that straight up doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Right.
From everything that we're presented, there is no evidence of that and no implication.
There's no way you get to that conclusion. So So it's like, these are the kinds of things that I'm dealing with. So when I say they're lying and people are trying to accuse me of being bad faith when I accuse them of that, it drives me insane. So I asked Gray, like, hey, would you agree that they lied about Terry? Like, is that an unreasonable thing to say? And you said they did lie. They 100% lied. It's
yeah. After seeing like everything that you'd kind of put together, like there's a bunch of like 100%. This is just incorrect. Like, I don't think it's just their mistake, and it appears to be straight up lies to me. I suppose I could be wrong, but yeah, I can't see any other explanation for it. It seems like it is intentional, so I'd have to call it lying. I wouldn't say it's just like they made a mistake here.
And
it really seems like it's egregious.
And I simply show that message at some point. It'd just be like, look, there are people in this like community, this audience, or adjacent to this audience, who do care about this stuff, who do care about what the facts are, and they are willing to, like, go into this sort of thing and be like, okay, so Southpaw seems to care about this show, yada yada. But what if they were wrong? What if EFAP was wrong? What happens if you entertain that possibility? And the reality is, like, SK, when he made his video earlier this year, it wasn't about whether they were right about terriers. It was just about the gaslighting behind the scenes and everything that really made everything just foul. He had to touch upon the rape thing too, because that was a part of it. But it wasn't merely them not liking the show, but then their fan base just doubled down after that. To then go like, well, the show sucks and you couldn't handle it. And I was like, oh, does it now? You want to argue that this is like, I keep highlighting this video, is like, their fans, like EFAP, when they covered this, and their fans in the years since have insisted that this is in fact reflective of how they criticize things. They've just assumed that they've criticized this the same way that they criticize Multiverse of Madness or Kenobi, things that they are very most likely. I mean, I've seen their Kenobi coverage and I like their Kenobi coverage. I haven't seen their Multiverse of Madness coverage. I watched Mahler's video, and save for a few things where I think he's being a bit bad faith, I think he's banging on about the memory store thing a way too much. But like, movie's really bad and it's not that hard to prove. So I'm not going to oppose him just because I don't like him as a person or as much of a critic. But I guess that a lot of people assume, well, he's been on point this much, so he must have been right with this show. It's like, well, the reality is that I think that these people, these fans of his who think that he couldn't have possibly been incorrect here, I think that these are people who've been conned. I think that these are people who think that because he's been able to go after this low-hanging fruit, what he says must go. Is like, well, the reality is he's good against this low-hanging fruit, and he's good at what he is passionate about. Okay, he is stepping out of his lane with some of this stuff, and I say, like, this is like, so I would be a terrible, terrible critic if I talked about musicals or horror. I'm not qualified to talk about these things. I don't care about these things. So I stick to what I'm passionate about. And I talk about this show because I'm passionate about it. I care about it. It's a 13-year-old show that lasted one season, doesn't have any cultural significance, but you know what? It's a good show with Donald Logan. I like Donald Logan as an actor. So, I talk about this, and I think that Gray would say that I'm good at talking about this. And Mahler is not. For sure. Mahler's not sticking just to things that he would be good at talking about, or the things that he is good at talking about aren't very hard things to be right about. He recently did a 6-hour video on Quantumania. I'm like, I mean, you're not really reinventing the wheel by proving that movie's bad. It's like, yeah, it's terrible. I saw it once and I fell asleep halfway through it. I don't feel the need to hear someone explain why it's bad. I think The Last Jedi was kind of interesting to hear him make as many arguments as he did, and that was very satisfying, especially given that it was very divisive, right? It was very divisive, and there was a lot of fighting about it, and he presented what I believe to be really solid arguments for why that movie was bad. Now, is it possible that some of these arguments don't hold up if you go back and look? Yes, because you know what? I mean, people have complimented my Spider-Man 2 video. I plan on revisiting it. Actually doing a video response to myself, to my own video, to criticize some arguments that I made that I think are flawed. I think
that's really interesting.
Yeah, I made mistakes in that video. I don't plan on deleting it or editing it or something. Like, no, I'm just gonna respond. It's like, yeah, that's not a good argument. Here's why, right? And so some of Mahler's points aren't as good. He complains about a salt planet being unrealistic. Salt is a mineral. I mean, given the nature of Star Wars having lava planets and rain planets and snow planets, I don't, single biome planets, basically. Salt, why not? Why can't you have a salt planet? So that's just one of those things where, like, that's kind of weird. It's not material to the more important stuff that he talks about, but that's one of those things where it's like, yeah.
I'm familiar with that video too, and I did like most of the arguments. Again, I might be primed because I
Mhm.
kind of agree with his conclusion on
Mhm.
that. But yeah, I don't think this is this whole experience has kind of like changed the way that I'm viewing them in total.
Mhm.
Like, I don't hate them or anything like
Mhm.
that. I do feel like they treated you very unfair in this
Mhm.
particular situation, and it seems like they've really exacerbated it and made it much worse and kind of amping up their audience against you in a bunch of really unfair ways. That being said, it doesn't really change like some of the quality content that they have out there, but it certainly makes me wonder, had I given that a fair shake? So I don't know. I would like to revisit some of their stuff, but that's awesome to hear that, you're willing to kind of revisit your own
Mhm.
work and kind of you are seeing
I mean,
errors in what you have criticized in the
I know that I
past.
need to.
I hope
I
maybe
know
this could even allow them to kind of see what you're talking about and perhaps see some of the errors in their own
I
criticism of
I know
this.
that I need to. I plan on going through B tasks again because when I did go through it, I was very ingratiated with EFAB at that point. And I'm realizing like I'm just thinking like I do worry is like was I bad faith with this show? And
Mhm.
so it's like with Hard Device, I've watched it enough, and I watched it very recently with Sheev, and we both came to the same conclusions. Like, yeah, there might be a few things that don't hold up about my old criticisms, but like the most substantive stuff is there in our opinion. So we like I want to revisit it, you know. But like uh, what I say towards the end of my video is like I can't force you to stop watching EFAP or to stop valuing what they have to say. That's up to you.
I don't think you're
Um,
even trying to.
no,
Like, this isn't about getting people to stop watching them or anything like that. It seems, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed more like you were trying to, like kind of clear the air,
Mhm.
make these incorrect
Mhm.
narratives that seem to be prevalent, kind of setting the record
Well,
straight, if you will.
it's funny because there's Blebo, the guy in that stream that that we were talking about. He has a guest segment in this
Hmm.
video, and he does say, "Stop watching these people; they're bad for your brains." And I definitely agree that like these people seem to be poison for one's brain and one's soul. However, it's like I don't have a problem. Like you say that you just recently watched EFAP. Like I don't have a problem with you for watching EFAP at this point, even knowing what you know.
Hmm.
It'd be a matter of like, are you what I say is like the one thing I can ask you to do is to think critically when you listen to them. Don't just take them at their
Yeah, and that
word.
is definitely one thing that kind of your video has made me do.
Mhm.
It definitely kind of makes me not just take them at their word.
Yeah, just
But, yeah, definitely, as you mentioned, that critical thinking, I don't know, I think, I was definitely going off of reputation,
mhm.
giving a little bit more of a pass than, perhaps they deserved,
Yeah.
prior to,
It
actually watching your video.
and you know what? I mean, here's the one of the best case scenarios of this video is maybe this gets them to go, oh, we're not nearly as good as we've gassed ourselves up to be. We need to do a lot better. We need to like we've squandered some of the goodwill and the trust that we built up at the start of this. We need to do better. And if they were to do better, like that would be great. It's up to them if they want to do that. What
Mhm.
I would absolutely just say is like um, if this results in them making better content and not fucking up like this ever again. And this also gets them to get their fan base to act like get their fans in line basically, and it reveals to people like um, these are fucking horrific things that people are saying on the basis of correct criticism. We shouldn't be
Yeah.
arguing like this. What I because the thing about the guilt by association thing is like I point out like two things can be true at once. They don't believe in everything that neurotic says just because they're friends with neurotic. However, they have the perception that they have as a result of those sorts of associations. It's affecting people in a certain way. I show a clip of a streamer who declined a request to go on EFAP as a result of this because he sees some of these clips and he's told like, oh well, this is out of context, and he says there's really no context that makes some of this stuff good. So like I
Mhm.
found that very interesting for him to say, and like, and the reality is also, and I show like an example of like a guy who is obviously very, very defensive of folks like Nerdrotic and Drinker. And he's made an entire Twitter account attacking me for having my stroke. And it's like,
that's horrible.
And I'm just highlighting this is like, see, this is the kind of person who does this. They also say that there is no such thing as anti-trans bias, while then just casually throwing the T-slur and referring to the suicide statistics. And it's like, so these are some of the kinds of people that they are bringing into their audience by like, because the types of people that they're palling around with, like when Gary is saying, "Oh, you shouldn't criticize BTAS because BTAS is great because everyone agrees and that's why it's great." It's like, right, you're not interested in making actual arguments, and the people that follow you aren't interested in making actual arguments. And so what's happening is you're now polluting, like these people are kind of polluting this fan base of people who, there's people in there who do care about what the facts are, and now it's like kind of this unholy cocktail of people with like very, very, very different priorities on whether to focus on the arguments or just following an anti-woke grift, I guess. And so it's like, and this is the weird thing is like, I mean, that particular, well, one of these many accounts or people dedicated to, like, who make accounts dedicated just to hating on me. You remember that one guy who like was like spreading that screenshot around trying to character assassinate me, right?
Yes.
That account that he made just to spread that screenshot, just to defame me, he was regularly tagging Rippaverse goalposts. So what this, like, and here's the thing is I haven't read ISOM, and I am so out of the loop on this thing. I have no interest in covering it on a couple different bases or bases. One of these being I am not a comics reader. So if I were to look at ISOM, I could probably talk about maybe writing, like if there's obvious plot holes or something, or maybe there's a strong theme or something. You know, I could talk about that. I'm not very good when it comes to like talking about the way in which like panels are spaced or formatted. I'm not good at talking about like, I'm aware of the concept of like foreshortening, but like I don't know about art, right? So there's a fellow that I follow on Twitter called Exalted Speed who does seem to be fairly knowledgeable on comics, right? And he'd be the kind of guy, he would be the kind of guy to talk about like comics and whatnot. I've seen like some panels of ISOM where it just seems like there's a particular action sequence in ISOM #1 that doesn't seem like it's the greatest.
Yeah, I think the one that was going around the internet, the kind of the 180-degree rule or whatever that it keeps breaking.
Yeah, and it's like,
I'm
like
pretty much in the same camp as you. Like I did read a lot of comics back in the 90s and stuff. I definitely had a niche, but even then, you know, like there's so many comics.
Right.
Like I was only into a couple runs of a couple different ones. I don't feel like I'm definitely no expert in comics. It's been years. I definitely haven't kept up with them. And then, you know, kind of the MCU, kind of its, I don't know what you want to call it, downward trajectory has kind of really kind of soured me from superhero stuff at this time. That being said, you know, it seems cool what Eric July is doing, and this is kind of his first work.
Right.
Like so I know a lot more like authors and stuff, and you know, like I'm a big fan of a lot of authors, and you can see their growth from like their first novel to like wherever they're at now. I don't know. I can see a lot of the criticisms that people are putting towards ISOM. So I haven't read it personally. I've watched a lot of the reviews, and the reviews pretty much go page by page through it. So unfortunately, I've experienced it, but I haven't actually sat down and like read it. And then those reviews tend to be going off of that pirated copy, which it tends to be. So I'm not sure if they did it intentionally, where they were trying to get away from like copyright issue by slightly changing the color, or if it's just kind of a bad scan. But from people who have like shown the pictures side by side, like the actual book they received, it doesn't appear to be like the best representation of it. So I don't know. I'm not sure that I'd be the best person to review it. Again, like you, like I could go through the story and stuff, but I kind of have a feeling that you know, this being his first story, perhaps it's not like his magnum opus or whatever. It's probably on its way to there. But I'd still like to applaud, you know, what he's done. He seems to have gone independent with this and like built a company, and the way that he's hyping this seems pretty amazing. Like it seems to be catching fire, unlike a lot of the indies that I've seen.
I absolutely appreciate the entrepreneurial spirit that he's got on display, right? There's
Yeah, for
just
sure.
an admiration for someone and I'm someone who wants to like do his own like book series, right? So I
Mhm,
absolutely like I've got an admiration for someone who can do this. Now, it's like
mhm.
in the same sense of like I wouldn't be any good if someone were to come to me for horror or musicals. I'd be dog shit when it comes to comics. Now it's like that one fight scene in Isom One, I could just be like, huh, this seems to be like missing some stuff. And I could spot that.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: the rest of Isom number one could be good. I'm not trying to say that the whole thing is bad because this one fight scene seems a bit wonky. Um, but just that's just one example of like that's like one of the only examples of how I could possibly fairly judge a comic book as a comic book, right? The other thing about
Mhm.
this is it seems to be super politically like the discourse around it seems to be super
Yeah,
politically charged. And there's
for sure.
a couple of reasons of that, of course, being like, you got bad faith critics of it, but also I really don't like seeing when Rippaverse goalposts is basically just harassing people, like anyone who speaks out against it, and then supporters of it, like again, like that one guy just tweeting that screenshot, and he's like, "Oh, this guy's trying to signal boost this character assassination material to this guy." So what the unfortunate reality is, it then makes me think like, so these are the kinds of people who would rather assassinate my character than engage in my arguments. If I were to then say make material critic, like what if I check out Isom and I decide it's bad and I try to make a review explaining why I think it's bad? What are these people going to then do?
Mhm.
And see, there's a part of me that, as someone who loves to go after sacred cows, in the sense of like, I don't care how much shit I'm going to get, I'm going to criticize it, right? I'm not trying to rip apart what people love. It's just
Mhm.
like I don't believe that anything should be above scrutiny. I've
Yeah,
dealt with such a headache with EFAP's audience at this point. I'm kind of ready to take a
I
break from
bet.
going after
Um,
such things, and ISOM
yeah,
doesn't appeal to me at all.
yeah,
It might be good for all I know. It might be good, but I'm also like, I don't know if I care personally. you know?
yeah. Um, so I do see it slightly different than you,
Mhm,
just from dealing with, people like actual fandom
mhm.
and a few of the other detractors. I feel like there's some really unfair criticism going
Most
on
likely there
about this
is.
book.
Most likely there is. Yeah.
Like, actual fandom just released a video, I think, like, a week ago where he was talking about he's spent a year working on the and when he means that he's done a bunch of different live streams, then he's, like, taken sections of that, and over that, it's been a year, but
Mhm,
he's still looking into a lot of Eric July's moves. A lot of just his, criticisms to me, they seem really unfair.
mhm,
Um, so to have kinda, like, the opposite side of that coin, I think, would be kinda like the Rippaverse goalpost type of people.
mhm,
I think if, people like Dane are allowed to be out there, I think you should kinda also allow the flip side of the coin. It's not necessarily something that I'd wanna do, like, I would ideally like to tackle multiple subjects, not just one
mhm,
thing. I know, right now it does seem like we are quite, fandom initiative based.
mhm.
We are trying to branch out from being pigeonholed there.
I mean, there's
But,
nothing wrong.
I don't know,
There's nothing. So it's like,
yeah, and I'm not saying that you're saying that, like, Rippaverse goalpost shouldn't exist, just I don't know. I like him as a good, yin to, Dane's
mhm,
yang, if you will. I like, I think they're kind of doing the same thing, but for opposite
mhm,
sides. I think that should be allowed. It's just not something
yeah.
I think I'd wanna do. That being said, I kind of have waded into this war, I guess.
Mhm,
Yeah, it appears I am definitely more on, Eric July's side. But that being said, I'm not, like, championing it and saying, like, he is the greatest.
mhm,
Like, I've definitely seen him personally do some slurs and,
mhm,
some language that I'm not comfortable
mhm.
with. I don't like some of the personal attacks where he could kind of just go after what the people are saying.
I wasn't like
That
super.
being said, I've seen oh, sorry, go right
Oh, I
ahead.
was just gonna say, like, I wasn't super impressed with his argument with SK about Miles Morales, which is on SK's channel, I think.
Yeah, and he had kind of a similar one with Bob. I think SK definitely handled it better than,
Oh
Bob
yeah,
did,
Bob's not a good arguer.
but Bob started doing a bunch of no, no, but, he started doing a bunch of personal attacks. I think Eric July then kinda took the bait, and,
Mm.
I don't like what he was saying after that, but I can definitely understand how he got so triggered.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I do wish, he did kind of focus a little bit more on the arguments 'cause, I don't know, he's got a different mind for sure, and I like, kinda hearing how he comes to some of his positions.
Absolutely.
I've definitely enjoyed watching some of Eric July's debates, but,
Mhm,
yeah, I would be interested to, hear kinda more of his position on that Miles Morales thing fleshed
mhm,
out 'cause I keep seeing a, very caricatured position from Dane where he keeps using this clip from like years ago where Eric is not saying that he likes Miles Morales, but is talking about how he's different than other kind of characters that are legacy characters that are kind of created after that. So I don't know. They're kind of saying that he's being talking out of both sides of his mouth on this. It could be that he's changed position over the years because that was years before he had both the SK and Bob debate. But he also never said that he liked it. He just thought that it was more fleshed out than some of these other ones. So I don't know. I think a lot of this is, people aren't actually talking. Instead, they're like choosing selective clips and coming to a conclusion off of that. I don't like that type of argument. So I would much rather actually talk to the person.
Yeah, I with the I guess that my thing on Ripiverse and Eric July stuff is just like, I guess I'd say it's apathy or like ambivalence. Or it's like I'm not going to get myself involved in this fight. Maybe I would like Isom, but the well has been somewhat poisoned by what I've seen of the way in which Ripiverse goalposts acts, and yeah.
For sure. And I think officially he's got no connection or anything like that. But yeah, I could understand, any hesitation to deal with very, I don't know what I'd call that, like polarized fan bases, especially considering the, one that you have just dealt with.
Yeah. And that's not to say that like Ripiverse Goalpost is officially like, involved with them, but it's just the fan base. Like I don't, if the fan base is, again, it's one of those things where it's like, because I, sort of highlight it in this video is like, man, if criticizing these guys comes with this kind of cost, like, is it worth being involved here? Is like, I mean, same kind of would have to go with Isom and Eric. And again, it could be good. I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm so spent and I don't think I really want to get involved in that discussion period. I certainly agree that there's criticism that seems to be like really, really bad faith of them. And that, I think that sucks, personally. Was there really anything else for me to add on any of this stuff? Like, I mean, we've kind of gone over.
Yeah, I think we kind of did everything.
There's nothing wrong with. I just want to say, like, there's nothing wrong with the direction in which your channel has been, and like, if you were to continue doing anti-fandom initiative stuff, there's nothing wrong with that. It's like, as long as they keep on basically doing all kinds of fuckery, there's nothing wrong with it. Myself personally, I am so done dealing with EFAP or addressing that circus. Like,
totally see that.
After this video is up, is like, I don't have any interest in covering the Batman criticisms anymore, or their Guardians of the Galaxy 3 stream, or their Banshees of Inisherin criticisms, or anything else. I mean, I just recently saw the Blue Beetle thing. I'm appalled by the arguments I saw there. But like, I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to make this video and highlight like these guys, the kinds of arguments that I've had to deal with as a result of criticizing them, makes it clear, like, you're not serious people and you're not ready for a serious conversation. So it's like, it's one of those things where I really don't like having to determine that someone's opinion isn't worth serious consideration. I really don't like it, but there's a certain threshold that you have to hit. And once you hit it, it's like, yeah, I'm fairly comfortable in like treating your opinion about as seriously as I would take like Doug Walker's or CinemaSins. And that's basically where that's going to be at.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. That's pretty much where I'm at as well with my detractors or my side of the internet as well.
Yeah,
I can totally understand where you're at. That makes sense to me.
There's a point where it's like, you've been doing this long enough and you're like, all the evidence just kind of speaks for itself, basically.
Yeah. I think I'm pretty much there. We don't have any major anything else planned, but we keep responding. So yeah, we would like to move on. I respect what you're doing, and I can completely understand wanting to kind of drop this and move on. But yeah, I do wish you the best of luck with everything else that you're going on with, because I definitely understand that urge to kind of want to move on from this thing, but also being able to get your entire argument out there and just let it kind of speak for itself.
Because because there hasn't been a sense of like real closure here in the last couple of years, just because just like these arguments are just so fucking bad, and I'm seeing people just and this is the thing, is like, for most people, Terriers is just a good show. It's just a good, fun little TV show. And it really shouldn't have been anything more than that.
Yeah, I actually didn't realize what show this was all about. Like, I had heard it was over a show, and when I finally figured out which one it was like, "What? That show? Like that?
Why that show?
Really?"
What happened?
Yeah, it just seems. And again, I am biased. I do like the actor a lot, but yeah, it doesn't seem like any sort of show that anything like this could stem from. But yeah, I guess that's really interesting that this could be so polarizing, especially considering what other shows were out there around that same time. A one season show that somehow led to this. I don't know. I'm assuming you didn't imagine that you'd kind of be so involved with terriers at this point in your life.
No,
but
no,
I don't know. It is an interesting direction that sometimes we're gonna thrust into.
I was just hoping, because here's the thing was, I was hoping Muller and Free would watch it, would like it as most people do, and then this could get people to check out the show. And
yeah,
well, I guess I'm getting people to check out the show anyways. Yeah. I got what I wanted.
If nothing else, it has definitely brought more eyes to terriers. So, I mean, that might be a good thing. I guess I'm looking for silver linings in this situation.
The ideal for me was that it wouldn't have been at the cost of losing these friendships and having to explain why
for sure.
These guys probably aren't really worth listening to. I've given Grey Poupée my blessing to basically put this section of the video in his video here, and I'll be sure to you know what I'll do is I'll look through like the exact timestamps of like this exact section right here. You know, that way you know what exactly to use. So you know, enjoy this little sneak peek of my video. Which is going to be titled Law and Border, Mueller and EFAP's Unbridled Hubris. That is the name of the video. And it's going to be up basically in, I think the plan is for it to be up on Wednesday. And my plan is to be able to premiere it starting at around 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. So
wow. Well, congrats. Yeah. I know this is, big. You've been working up to the full video premiere for quite a while now. So
thank you.
This is huge. Everybody check it out next Wednesday. And just thanks again for being willing to have this talk with me. And then that's mighty kind of you to be willing to also allow us to sneak peek part of your video early.
Well, thanks for having me on and just offering me a chance to like try to like, again, I'm really trying to front load this, like unpoison the well as much as I can, because it's I've got my work cut out for me there, basically.
For sure, you do. Well, thanks again.
Thank you, sir. Speaking of duplicitous things, remember that thing I mentioned earlier about Britt's girlfriend being taken advantage of while she was drunk? Well, here's that scene.
Hey, it's Britt. Give me a message. Having problems?
Yeah, the key doesn't work.
Maybe it's because it's not your car. It's a sobriety test. I mean, if you can't find your car, then maybe you shouldn't drive it home.
That's actually very good advice.
Why don't you let me give you a ride?
I can't ride you. I have a boyfriend. Gavin.
It's not like you're married.
Just doing his fucking human rights. Just being like, hey, girl, I like you. Do you like me? Let's do stuff. Which is totally allowed. Even if they're entangled with someone else. You could say it's bad etiquette, but I mean, we're talking about love here. It gets complicated.
You okay?
I said no, okay?
Katie? Hey. Everything okay here? Yeah, everything's fine, Professor.
Here's what she said about it to Hank the next day.
I don't deserve him. I messed up.
Oh, you didn't?
I got drunk and I...
No, please. You don't have to finish that sentence. Need someone from school.
I'm a professor.
You were drunk. It wasn't you. And you didn't know what you were doing.
No, I was drunk, and it wasn't me. I knew exactly what I was doing.
Then why?
I don't know. I mean, I've been feeling the way he's looking at me lately. I pretty much know what's coming next.
That's what you want.
That's exactly what I want. What's wrong with me? Why, Hank, when everything's like so perfect? I'm gonna lose him. I know it.
It's okay.
Oh my God, he's never gonna forgive me.
You gotta forget it happened. Okay?
I can't do that.
Then pretend.
Now let's hear how it was described on EFAP.
So, oh my god, it's so bad. So, like, Britt is a guy just doing his thing, and his girlfriend, oh man, you know, what a great girlfriend. I can't wait to just settle down with you, maybe. Maybe, you know, I'll get a dog. Maybe we can have a kid. Maybe we get married. You know, and this girl, she seems A-okay. She seems fine. Pretty normal as a character. So, she's doing some uni stuff, some college stuff. And, you know, after a night of going out, doing some drinking, she wakes up the following morning and, oh no, she slept with the professor. Oh, yeah.
Uh-oh.
I know.
That stands in stark opposition to the concept you love somebody.
Oh, well, you know, she was drunk, right? That's probably the reason, Rags. She was drunk. She was drunk.
Oh,
You expect
no.
maybe that the show is going to be like, I made a huge fucking mistake, I got drunk, and I feel awful because we were just about to start our life. That might be the drama, but no. She says, you know, I just wasn't ready to get married. That's the reason.
Yeah. You know what? Since Mueller wants to take the mask off, let's take the mask off. Let's see how Mueller substantiated this totally accurate, utterly unbiased, and completely honest spin on the events of the show. With a clip from the scene I've just shown, when he was talking about these particular criticisms on his server. Rather than simply downloading that clip, I had this person screen record themselves playing this clip in order to confirm that this was in fact what Mueller had posted himself. Let's see if he kept in all those shots of Katie sobbing remorsefully.
You were drunk. It wasn't you. And you didn't know what you were doing.
No, I was drunk, and it wasn't me. But I knew exactly what I was doing.
Then why?
I don't know.
You have got to be shitting me.
So, that's right. Mueller would have had to open up that episode, go to that scene, clip out what he used, and then completely omit everything in the scene that makes it clear that Katie believes she's made an enormous mistake and is overwhelmed with guilt about it.
You know, like a liar.
You expect maybe that the show is going to be like, I made a huge fucking mistake, I got drunk, and I feel awful because we were just about to start our life. That might be the drama, but no. She says, you know, I just wasn't ready to get married. That's the reason.
Of course, that wasn't the only clip that Mueller provided for context here. Let's look at the other clip.
Why did you do it?
I don't know. I've been trying to figure it out.
You bored? What's wrong? What did I do? Do you love me? Then tell me. Tell me what?
Because you're not ready. You're not ready for any of this. I can tell. You're not ready for me.
So this is from 4 episodes later after Katie admits that she's pregnant and doesn't know who the father might be. The two of them have an extremely heated exchange about this.
Britt, I wish so much that...
Can't take it back, Katie. Who was it?
It's just...
Bullshit! Who was it?
Nobody. Not like I like him. It just happened.
The hell does that mean? It just happened. Did you pick him up? Why are you protecting him?
Protecting you.
I don't need your protection.
I'd do anything to take it back, and I can't, and I just... Oh, God. I'm so scared. I didn't want to hurt you.
Why did you do it? What's wrong? What did I do? If you love me, then tell me. Tell me what?
Because you're not ready. I can tell. You're not ready for me. You marry me, and you'd hate me. And you'd hate your life. You're not ready.
So, as you can see, Britt is acting incredibly emotionally, understandably so based on what information he's working off of, and is yelling during this entire exchange. Now, I'm not entirely sure if you've ever been in a heated argument with somebody, but usually when they are getting extremely loud, cutting you off, and yelling at you, it's quite natural for this to rile you up and get you to begin escalating your tone in return, unless you are going out of your way to avoid doing this.
I mean,
Why is he not being investigated for tax evasion? Either he's evading taxes or he lied under oath. Perjury.
Well, I mean, all he's saying is, so it says on our taxes that we sell seashells by the seashore.
Yes, it is illegal. It is
That's a
illegal
lie.
to lie on your tax.
and all the people in that room know they're lying.
But that's not what they're actually putting on their tax forms, though.
No. So you lied under oath, then?
Is that actually going to fall under oath? Is that actually going to fall as a lie under oth, where you just simply make a joke like that? Katie is literally saying here that she still doesn't understand why she cheated, an answer which Britt refuses to accept, and gives her an ultimatum after yelling at her for a solid minute.
What's wrong? What did I do? Do you love me? Then tell me! Tell me what?
When you are under pressure like this during a heated argument, you might be prompted into saying something you end up regretting, possibly even immediately, such as Katie does here. This sort of thing is why it's important to try your best to keep a lid on even during high-pressure arguments, but it is not unheard of at all for a heated argument to cause someone to let out their bottled-up emotions or lash out in frustration. These types of moments can be found across media, and when they show up, they aren't presented as truly indicative of a character's moral fiber, but as what they are in real life. Unfortunate episodes of our emotions getting the best of us. Like with the other clip, Mueller left all of that context out when showing small clips of these scenes to his server, and in doing so, prompted his fans to send these lovely messages about Katie. Pepe cringe grin. This is after her screeching he wasn't ready, before she ends up explaining the reason to Britt 4 episodes later. What a fucking piece of shit. Nah, we lied about the show apparently.
Correct!
Holy shit. Pepe hysterically laughing. Love the titles of these files, by the way. You're not ready for me. I've never agreed with the victim blaming part, just stating she wasn't entirely blameless on the matter. Is she somewhat of a cunt for— I said she was a shitty person. I said that because she said she wasn't sure why she cheated, but ultimately she landed on, you aren't ready for me. She can go fuck herself. You aren't ready for me, so I broke your heart and trust. She seems a bit cuntish, and that's only the beginning of the fucking laundry list for this show. That line just reeks of the writers trying to punish the dude for his shitty actions, while trying so hard to justify her in some way. Just grasping. These guys ain't beating the misogyny allegations, by the way. That second clip also left this part out, of course.
I can't even really barely remember anything about it, except I just woke up wanting to take it all back. I mean, Britt.
I feel like Mueller and Free would know if she was a rape victim or not. Well, Thunderess, as the old saying goes, facts do not care about your feelings. Hey, wait a minute. Let's look at how Mueller clipped this scene again.
Why did you do it?
I don't know. I didn't want to hurt you.
Why did you do it?
I can tell you're not ready for me. I can tell you're not ready for me. You marry me, and you'd hate me. And you'd hate your life.
Right. It just happened to leave out what Katie said both immediately before and immediately after what the clip plays. Probably because that went against his agenda of making her look as villainous as possible. Because that's what you have to do when the truth is on your side, right? Carefully leave out context.
The issue I take with is people who either like lie about media to, push their own preferences necessarily, or that are just giving analysis that's absolutely fucking worthless, like absolutely shallow.
Look, fellas, I did not force Mueller to do this. Nor did I force him or his friends to say any of the vile things they said about Katie. Nor did I force them to egg on their fans to join in on this grotesque misogyny. They freely chose to do all of that, whilst fully aware that people were telling them that this character was raped, and that they had victim blamed. Maybe, instead of getting mad at me for calling a spade, you ought to be a little outraged at them for whatever you wish to call this. I should also probably highlight that if you are being accused of making a mistake as serious as this, it's probably not a good idea to jump to a counterattack before you've had a chance to hear out why someone believes you've made a serious mistake here. Maybe think before you speak. Whatever you do, I really wouldn't advise editing this deceptively to frame the alleged rape victim as a whore to your flying monkeys, whilst knowing that people who've actually seen the full show and all the context are understandably upset with what you've said here. That just makes it really hard to be as charitable towards you as you clearly feel entitled to, and this is also really going to undermine your argument if you later proceed to morally grandstand about how evil the main characters are. I don't know, that's just my personal advice. Now, when I first saw these arguments while watching their stream, I was willing to chalk this up to these guys just not understanding that this character was raped. Perhaps because the show doesn't have any character explicitly call this rape. However, it's worth mentioning that these guys did not need Wonder Woman 1984 to refer to this as rape in order to recognize that what it depicted, objectively, was rape.
Oh no! Oh no! What did you do?
Oh my god.
Whoa!
No!
This is not okay.
That's not. No, it's not.
Guys, what are you?
Oh my
No,
god.
it's not.
Sexual harassment. Sexual harassment. Sexual harassment. Sexual harassment.
Where's Brown Table when we need him?
I wonder if that crowd is even going to take issue with this. Like, will they even fucking recognize how awful this is?
It's a guy that's being victimized here, so fuck him. If the genders were swapped here, right? If this was a male superhero doing this with like a random woman's body, this would not be accepted.
I'm surprised that they did this.
Why
They didn't have to, but they did, yeah. And they're not even gonna...
Me Too as well. For Mueller to then go, oh, well, I don't remember the show acknowledging from her point of view that it was rape, as if that at all fixes anything, is frankly disingenuous.
You can interpret any line of dialogue as not true.
These guys may be incredibly stupid, but even they should know better. They are not 13-year-olds, nor people who at least have a history of never appealing to death of the author when it comes to a fictional story's moral framing, which they even tried to do with this very show. They are adults, and they are supposed to be critics with an enhanced attention to detail, and they have spotted this sort of thing in stories in the past, without needing their hands held. They insisted that they gave this show their full attention as they would have with anything else, and even took notes. Maybe they just forgot how consent works. One of the more frustrating layers to this is that while the events that are depicted in the show do not break or even bend any character writing or cause and effect, or lead to some truly wonky moral message being conveyed through the text, it is a valid point of criticism that this one aspect of the show has aged poorly since our understanding of what consent means has progressed since the making of the show. I don't think the writers meant any harm when writing this in the manner they did. This show is just a product of a time in which society's understanding of consent has become obsolete, which makes mistakes like this far more understandable in older media than when they show up in the present day. Unfortunately, EFAP did not bother pointing this out. They seem to have missed what would have been a fair point of criticism, even if it wasn't at all detrimental to the story. It's probably also worth highlighting that this exact scenario is legally recognized as rape according to California Penal Code section 261 subsection A3. Not that what the law states is really an argument for why this is or isn't rape ontologically speaking. After all, marital rape was not legally recognized as rape anywhere in the US prior to the 1970s, and it wasn't until 1993 that every state's lawmakers had agreed it was probably not a good idea to offer citizens carte blanche to have sex with someone they were married to without first getting their consent. I guess they didn't teach that at the university where Fringy studied law either. Probably because, you know, it would have been concerned with Australian law, mate. Then again, their understanding of the law did also come from watching a lot of American procedurals, which is probably why they never raised any fuss over the trope of detectives picking up evidence with their personal pens rearing its head in this show. That makes how many actually valid criticisms of terriers I've brought up that these guys missed now? Some sacred cow it is. Not to worry, there's at least one more that I'll bring up later. Anyways, maybe in their precious headcanon, the law in the real world conforms to their delusional understanding of it. Regardless of everything I've outlined thus far, I have firsthand seen people genuinely miss that Katie was raped, despite generally approaching the show in good faith, which makes me think that unlike many of the things that they would have had to have deliberately taken out of context, that Katie was raped is at least somewhat plausible to miss. Going by Hanlon's razor, I wouldn't say that these guys were deliberately being rape apologists, which I never said. However, that doesn't change the fact that they victim blamed, which, unlike rape apology, can be done out of ignorance. However, even if we set aside the entire argument over whether or not this was rape, it is undeniable that Mueller carefully edited context out of clips he posted to his server, and misled his trusting fans into engaging in truly skin-crawling rhetoric centered on this character.
Flashback. My position, that I don't think I've ever stated otherwise, is that if you're going to criticize a thing, be it a movie or a video, something that has an actual start, middle, finish, and then you're going to attack it for a position it takes and ignore any context within that thing that would make your points invalid, then that is dishonest. So for example,
it's a lie through omission.
Yeah.
End of flashback.
The justifications that I've been hearing for Terrier's many problems have been among some of the worst I've ever heard. It's indistinguishable from what we'd hear from videos we cover on EFAP. I cheated on you because you weren't ready for me or marriage.
But what did she mean, Mueller?
You're horrible.